Having promised to help Cheryl, Leo committed himself fully to the task. He went over the program for the freshman welcome gala, making a quick list of the performances, ranking them by their complexity and how difficult they would be to prepare. With a clear plan in mind, Leo gathered a few of the veteran members of the arts department and checked the progress on the projects they were responsible for. Then, he called in the freshmen in charge of each act, one by one. He went over everything a second time. He asked about the challenges or inconveniences each group was facing. For problems he could solve on the spot, he offered advice and potential solutions. For those that needed support with costumes, makeup, or props, he jotted down a list of requirements. Some groups needed to book rehearsal spaces, and he noted that as well, promising to coordinate the scheduling. He was calm, confident, and completely in his element, methodically untangling the messy knot of gala preparations. With his guidance and coordination, every performance was able to move forward smoothly. Time slipped by without him noticing. By the time he had dealt with all the minor details and helped the freshmen resolve their issues, sending them off one by one with satisfied thank yous, Leo could finally take a breath. He remembered there were still a few acts he hadn't gotten to yet. When he asked someone about them, he got an unexpected answer. It's already been handled. We just had a few small issues. Yvonne, the new it girl, freed up some time and helped us figure it out. One of the acts needed a rehearsal space, and she already contacted someone and arranged it for us. Leo was taken aback. He turned to look at a corner on the other side of the activity room. Yvonne Moreau was there with the other gala hosts, diligently going over their scripts, completely absorbed in her work. On top of her own duties as a host, she was still finding time to help out the other performers. Leo raised an eyebrow. That gibberish girl. She's actually pretty capable. With all the tasks handled, Leo didn't stick around the arts department. He told everyone to keep up the good work with their rehearsals and finally stepped out of the activity room. By the time he left the small building that housed the humanities department, it was already past 8 in the evening. The sky was filled with stars. Thinking his girlfriend should be back from her classes on a new campus by now, Leo pulled out his phone and gave his dear Bertha Sue a call. Ring, ring. She picked up after 2 rings. He asked, only to find out she wasn't back yet. According to Claire, after class, she had dragged Isabella Zhao to the new Mako Entertainment office on Kongping Road. After inspecting the company's new decor with the authority of the boss's wife, she had been ready to head back. But then something came up at Sterling Holdings. So, after parting ways with Isabella, she had taken a cab to the Sterling Holdings headquarters by herself. She was in a meeting right now, just sitting in and listening. I'll probably be back really late. Don't wait up for me. You should go back to your dorm and get some rest, Claire said over the phone. Leo nodded. All right, be safe on your way back. Let me know when you get there. Claire hummed in agreement. Just before she hung up, she asked another question. Have you missed me? Without a second's hesitation, Leo nodded. Of course I have. Bertha Sue sounded pleased. Then give me a kiss. Leo was standing right in front of the humanities building. He glanced around. People were coming and going. He slipped over to a corner, phone in hand, and peeked around again to make sure no one was looking his way. Then he quickly brought the phone to his lips and made a kissing sound. There. Happy. Claire's voice was laced with a smile. Happy. I'm hanging up now. Leo wasn't satisfied and made his own demand. Wait, you kiss me too. But his girlfriend refused. I'm in a meeting. It's not convenient. Leo sighed in disappointment. All right. Well, you go to your meeting. Then the reality of the situation hit him. Wait a second, he said. You're in a meeting right now? In a conference room? Claire hummed an affirmative. Yep. Your big brother is sitting right next to me. Want to say hi? Leo Hammer Wallace's eyes widened in horror. Nope. I'm hanging up by... Click. He ended the call in an instant. At the same time, in the conference room on the 36th floor of the Sterling Holdings headquarters in the downtown CBD, Claire put her phone away, an irrepressible smile gracing her lips. My boyfriend is so cute. It's so much fun to tease him then. The smile vanished, and her expression returned to its usual cool composure. She looked up at the Sterling Holdings employees seated around the conference table, her tone casual. Is everyone here? What are you waiting for? Let's begin the reports. The employees sitting at the table were trying with all their might to hide the seismic shock in their eyes. Yes, of course. They turned their trembling gazes to their chairman, who was seated at the head of the table next to his daughter. Mr. Sterling, shall we begin? The chairman's face was frozen stiff. He took a deep breath, then another. Yes, begin. Back in his dorm that night, Leo opened his laptop and continued to work on the game design plan for Heavenly Tactics. Even though he'd assigned the task to Wyatt, he couldn't just wash his hands of it completely. Thinking it through alone was a bit taxing, so Leo logged on to AM and messaged Potato pulling the original author of the web novel in to help him brainstorm. Time flew by as they discussed the details. By the time it was late, his other roommates were already in bed. Exhausted, Leo finally closed his laptop, yawned, and climbed into his bunk. Lying in his bed, he habitually pulled out his phone before sleeping and saw 2 messages Claire had sent him half an hour ago. The first, back in the dorm. He clicked on the second message. Making up for that kiss. Moi came with a red lipstick kiss emoji. A small smile touched Leo's lips as he typed back. Received. Good night. He had gone to bed late, but Leo was still up bright and early the next day. After washing up, he left the dorm, went straight to the dining hall, and bought breakfast before heading to the girls' dorm, Building 16. He had timed it perfectly. Just as he arrived at the entrance, before he even needed to send a text or make a call, he saw his girlfriend walking down the stairs, backpack on and rubbing her sleepy eyes. When she saw Leo standing at the entrance, Claire froze. Thinking she was still dreaming, she rubbed her eyes and looked again to be sure. A rare, adorably dazed expression appeared on her usually cool and ethereal face. Leo walked up to her with a smile. Stop rubbing. You're not dreaming. It's me. You have to go to the new campus for the next 2 days, so we won't get to see each other since you'll be leaving early and coming back late, he explained. I was afraid you'd miss me, so I got up early to bring you breakfast and squeeze in a few seconds to see you before you leave. As he spoke, Leo held up the breakfast bag. Bagels, coffee, a breakfast burrito. I got a little of everything. There's a lot, so if you can't finish it, you can share with Molly, Quinn, and Jade. His chattering instructions were endless and repetitive, but Claire listened, entranced. A warm current flowed through her, and emotions slowly filled her chest. Before Leo could finish, a fragrant breeze washed over him. He barely had time to react before Claire threw herself into his arms. The young woman wrapped her arms around her boyfriend's neck and buried her head in his shoulder, murmuring indistinctly, No, you bought it for me, so it's all mine. I'll eat it all myself. Leo instinctively wrapped his arms around his girlfriend, a helpless smile on his face. You have that big of an appetite? Can you even finish it? Claire rubbed her head forcefully against his shoulder, her tone like a pouting child's. I can finish it. Then she rose on her tiptoes, leaned close to his ear, and whispered, almost nibbling on his earlobe. After I finish this weekend, back at the LNS house, I'm going to eat you. The morning was bright and sunny. On the Berkeley campus in the early summer, a certain Leo Hammer Wallace, who wished to remain anonymous, felt a sudden rush of heat that nearly resulted in a nosebleed. The advertising track's Thursday morning class started at 9:30. Leo had been downstairs at the girls' dorm at 7-something to deliver breakfast. After seeing his dear Bertha Sue onto the campus shuttle, he turned around, ready to head back to his own dorm to catch a little more sleep. He hadn't taken more than a few steps before his phone rang. He pulled it out and was surprised to see it was a call from his girlfriend. He answered and put the phone to his ear. What's up? Did you forget something? A sleepy, nasal came from the other end. I forgot you. I should have brought you with me to class. Leo couldn't help but laugh. I have my own classes to attend. Besides, you brought Blackie the Leo Hammer with you, right? Let him stand in for me for a bit. After coaxing her for a moment and hearing the lingering sleepiness in her voice, Leo suggested, Let's not talk anymore. You should take a nap on the bus. But Claire stubbornly shook her head on the other end. No, I want to talk to you. The half-asleep campus queen of Berkeley sounded soft and spoiled. As she said this, inside the moving shuttle bus, her roommates from room 205, who had been sitting next to her, had already discreetly moved far away. You couldn't listen in on the reasonable couple's phone calls. The collateral PDA damage was too high. Further away, other students from their business program curiously perked up their ears to eavesdrop. Hearing the soft, coddling tone in their campus queen's voice, they all shuddered. Their pupils quaked with a magnitude 10 earthquake. With bleeding hearts, they silently put on their headphones and earbuds. Our departments, our schools, our university's perfect, ice-cold campus queen. Can't you be a little more reserved when you're on the phone with your boyfriend? Damn it, Northwood High really should be destroyed. While others were being wounded by the public display of affection, to Leo, his girlfriend's coquettishness was nothing but heartwarming. It was the feeling of being needed. To be needed like this by the girl he loved most was, in itself, the greatest happiness and satisfaction. Something single people would never understand. So, he stopped insisting and agreed with a smile. All right, let's talk for a bit. He slowed his pace. As he ambled through campus toward the dorms, he chatted aimlessly with his girlfriend. They talked about her sitting in on the Sterling Holdings meeting yesterday, She explained briefly that the meeting was about the annual plan for the company's Southwest division, a part of the business she had previously been in charge of, so she was paying close attention. Also, just as they had discussed during their late-night talk on the beach months ago, Claire had decided to slowly start taking over some of Sterling Holdings' projects and responsibilities starting in the second half of the year. After discussing it with Charles Sterling, she would first participate in some of the headquarters' decision-making meetings as an observer. Once she was familiar with the company's current situation and personnel, she would take on more specific duties. They had already talked about this plan months ago, so Leo wasn't surprised and voiced his support. He then added a casual joke. In that case, should I start calling you President Sterling now? The Sterling Holdings CEO from his past life was, by a twist of fate, taking the throne early in this one. The king had returned to his rightful place. Suddenly, he felt that the pace of his own entrepreneurial efforts was a bit too slow. After half a year of hard work, his titles of CSO at Happy Nest and chairman of Mako Entertainment, when put together, didn't seem to carry as much weight as the title of Sterling Holdings kept man. Claire, on the other end of the line, had no idea what her boyfriend was thinking. She just shook her head at his joke, correcting him. No, compared to being President Sterling, I'd much rather be the boss's wife at Mako Entertainment. Her spirits lifted as she talked about it. She told Leo how after class yesterday, she had gone with Isabella Zhao to the office space Mako Entertainment had rented on Komping Road. It was a nice, spacious floor in a small townhouse-style building. She had gone to inspect it with the air of the boss's wife. The programming and art teams were already there, working. Some of them recognized her, the famous campus queen, and were about to exclaim in shock, but she silenced them with a look and introduced herself with a smile as Tessa Yuan. So, her alias was still holding up in front of the clueless Isabella. And given Isabella's level of intelligence, she wasn't likely to figure it out anytime soon. Leo stroked his chin, thinking, I don't think there's any real need to keep up the alias. You're only fooling her at this point. Claire agreed. True. Then, after a moment, she added, but it's kind of fun tricking Isabella. Leo nodded vigorously. Absolutely. The reasonable couple had once again reached a happy consensus. It wasn't for any particular reason. It was purely for their own amusement. According to Claire, she had met all the company members, and the atmosphere was great. The only regret was that she had been in a hurry and hadn't brought any of the boss's wife's homemade cookies to cheer everyone up. Chef Sterling sounded a little disappointed about that. On his end of the line, Leo wiped away a bead of sweat. No biggie. It's no problem. You can bring some next time. Thank God she didn't. Otherwise, the prestigious Mako Entertainment, a rising star in the domestic game development scene, would have nearly had its entire founding team wiped out by the boss's wife herself. The morning sun was warm. As he walked leisurely through campus, a gentle breeze blew past, refreshing and pleasant. Through the phone, he could hear the cool wind whipping past the windows of the moving shuttle. The couple chatted idly. Slowly, Claire started getting sleepy again, and she drifted off while still holding the phone. Leo called her name a couple of times with no response. He guessed she had fallen asleep. Thinking of his girlfriend sleeping sweetly on the bus, he couldn't help but smile. He whispered a gentle, sweet dreams and hung up the phone. Putting his phone away, he walked back to the dorm with a spring in his step. After his morning class, Leo had a simple lunch in the dining hall and then went straight back to the arts department in the humanities building. Just as he reached the entrance, before he even saw Cheryl, a familiar figure popped out. Hey, Leo. Leo was surprised to see Marco Shaw materialize out of thin air. What are you doing here? Didn't Cheryl send you to handle sponsorships? Marco puffed out his chest, speaking righteously. What's wrong with sponsorships? Handling sponsorships doesn't mean I can't come back and check out the new girls. At the entrance to the arts department's activity room, Marco Shaw delivered a passionate speech to Leo. I knew Cheryl had ulterior motives when she sent me to handle sponsorships. Turns out she was trying to get the tiger out of the mountains. His eyes lit up again. I heard Yvonne Moreau is one of the hosts for the gala this year, right? Leo, have you seen her in person? Tell me, is she gorgeous? Leo thought for a moment and gave an objective assessment. She's all right. A little. Gibberish why? Marco was completely confused. What-ish? And he waved his hand dismissively. Forget it. Asking you is useless. You're a guy who has it all and doesn't know the hunger of us common folk. You got your girl. So don't you dare try to compete with us for this new girl, Moreau. As he was talking, he suddenly had a realization, a look of wonder on his face. Hey, my girl, Moreau. Damn, it rhymes. Leo paid no mind to what Marco was muttering and just waved him in. Since you're here, you might as well come take a look. They were short-handed for supervising the rehearsals anyway. An extra pair of hands to help evaluate the performances was always a good thing. He walked straight into the activity room, and Marco followed eagerly behind, not forgetting to add, Leon and Dylan are coming later too. They're all curious to get a look at the new it girl. Once inside, he didn't even have time to look for the freshman beauty before he was hit with the chaotic and noisy scene. Freshman orientation was over, and there was still a week until the welcome gala. It sounded like plenty of time, but for the freshmen who had to attend orientation activities all day, they could only squeeze in rehearsal time during their lunch break and in the evening. So the schedule was tight. Many of the freshmen in their department, in order to get more rehearsal time and deliver a better performance at the gala, were racing against the clock. The moment their afternoon orientation activities ended, they didn't even bother going back to their dorms to rest or shower. They rushed straight from the field in their sweat-soaked orientation t-shirts and shorts. Their dedication was admirable, but with a huge crowd of sweaty boys and girls packed into the unair-conditioned activity room, the place instantly became stuffy. The pungent smell of sweat filled the air, almost making him recoil. Marco, who had followed Leo in gleefully, was nearly knocked out by the smell before he could even start his search. Holy shit, it stinks in here. Did someone let out a 10-pound fart? Leo didn't have time for Marco's theatrics. He simply said, if you can't handle it, you can go back to the dorm. Then he went off to coordinate with the other department members about today's rehearsal schedule. Marco was still holding his nose, about to complain some more, when his eyes casually swept to the side. He saw a group of beautiful freshmen from the school's etiquette team walking over in their modeling outfits. They were all tall and slender, walking on high heels, their long, pale legs on full display. His gaze was instantly glued to them. Marco's eyes lit up again, and all his disgust vanished. Doesn't stink anymore, doesn't stink at all. Whoa, smells great. The freshmen had orientation activities in the afternoon, so they could barely squeeze out 2 hours of rehearsal time during their lunch break. The moment Leo arrived, he was busy. He checked in with each performance group, confirming their progress. Yesterday, they had solved some problems, but today, new ones had already popped up. A dance group had lost 2 pairs of earrings and a headpiece. A magician's costume had an issue. The violinist practice room had been taken by students from another department, and now she had nowhere to practice. They weren't major problems, but they were incredibly tedious. Anyone else would have been driven crazy, but Leo handled everything with his usual calm and unhurried demeanor. The arts department should have spare earrings and headpieces in storage. He sent someone to get them. If they weren't suitable, he'd send someone to a nearby mall to buy new ones. The magician's costume just had a small hole in the shirt, not a big deal. He could wear a jacket over it and button it up to hide it. As for the violinist needing a new practice room, Leo reassured her, I can ask Lily Lou. I'll give her a call and see what she can do. Effortlessly, he resolved one problem after another. The freshmen left, grateful and happy, chattering among themselves about how capable their senior, Leo, was. Meanwhile, Marco was also diligently helping out, offering his expert advice to the etiquette team. Just walking the runway is too monotonous. You need to incorporate more poses. You have to capture the audience's psychology. Hey, I think you should try different kind of stockings. Why don't you change into a new pair right now? That last line revealed his true colors. Cheryl, who was just passing by, caught him red-handed and grabbed him by the ear. You brat, I sent you to handle sponsorships, and you're here harassing the freshmen, are you? And so, Marco was dragged away, wailing for mercy. Just as Marco was hauled off, the other 2 members of room 520 arrived, full of excitement. They were also here for the show. Leon, however, was simple and honest. He didn't spend much time looking at the pretty girls. He was genuinely there to help. He helped carry a table here, a pile of props there. Worried that the freshmen hadn't eaten lunch, he reached into his pocket and, like a magician, pulled out a handful of homemade date cakes, enthusiastically handing them out. Have some. Keep your energy up. The freshmen happily accepted them, politely thanking him. Thanks, date cake guy. Dylan also wanted to help. He saw a standing backdrop that needed to be moved and tried to lift it, but his slender frame was no match for Leon's. The metal frame of the backdrop was heavy, and he almost fell over as soon as he lifted it. A group of girls from a dance troupe who were passing by gasped and rushed over. Are you okay, senior? Are you hurt? Let me see. Suddenly, Dylan was surrounded by a flock of chattering girls, and he was completely flustered. His lips trembled, but he couldn't get a word out. His face turned beet red. The girls were confused. Why isn't he saying anything? Does he not know how? Just then, Yvonne Moreau walked over, a confident look on her face. I know sign language. She walked up to Dylan and gave him a slight smile. Hello, senior. Then she began to gesture fluently with her hands. Dylan was stunned by the sudden appearance of the beautiful freshman. When he came to his senses, he was even more bewildered. Good news. He had seen the new-it girl. More good news. She was kindly communicating with him in sign language. Bad news. He didn't know sign language. Fortunately, a familiar, pleasant female voice cut in. You got it wrong. Dylan isn't mute. Everyone turned to look. Lily Lou, in a white dress, gracefully walked over and helped clear things up with a smile. He's just nervous. It's no big deal. Don't crowd him. Go on, get back to what you were doing. She dispersed the crowd of girls, and Dylan, relieved, gave Lily a grateful nod before quickly making his escape. That left just Lily and Yvonne. Yvonne looked at Lily surprised. Senior, aren't you supposed to be on your lunch break? What are you doing here? Lily smiled. I was just about to take a nap, but that guy Leo called me and asked me to come help. Yvonne paused. Now, Senior, you know Leo? Lily was curious, too. Why? You know him now, too? As they were talking, the sound of a guitar came from not far away. They followed the sound and saw a freshman who was performing a guitar piece practicing. He was playing a bit unskillfully. Leo walked over, took the guitar from him, and began to demonstrate. He sat on a chair and played a love song, his fingers moving with an easy grace, the notes flowing out like a gentle stream. Watching this scene, Lily seemed to fall into a daze, remembering this time last year, watching him from outside a window as he practiced in a sun-drenched classroom. She felt a pang of nostalgia. Yvonne was also watching. Hearing the love song, she too felt a wave of complicated emotions. Answering her senior's earlier question, she sighed softly and replied, It's more than just knowing him. He likes me. Lily. She was stunned, utterly stunned. With a head full of question marks, Lily turned to her junior. What the hell? Him, Leo, likes you. She must have woken up too abruptly from her nap. Her ears were playing tricks on her. She actually heard her junior say that Leo liked her. That was Lily Lou's immediate thought. However, when she asked again in a tone of disbelief, she received a solemn nod from the freshman standing before her. That's right. As she spoke, Yvonne once again looked toward the corner of the activity room. The guy was holding a guitar, demonstrating a technique to the freshman next to him. The melody of a pop love song played beautifully. To Yvonne's ears, it was just the senior's earnest attempt to convey his feelings from afar. She couldn't help but shake her head and sigh softly. I really have no intention of dating right now, but he's just so intense. For such a shy and introverted person to do all this for someone he likes, he must have worked up a lot of courage. I just don't have the heart to be too blunt, or I might really hurt him. As Yvonne went on with her complicated, gibberish-filled monologue, Lily was practically dumbfounded. She came to her senses and quickly stopped her. Whoa, hold on. Help me get this straight. He likes you. How did you figure that out? Yvonne looked at Lily with a puzzled expression, as if she couldn't believe it. How could a smart person like you not see something so obvious? But she still kindly explained, recounting her various encounters with him, bringing her breakfast, getting her a drink, following her to the library, and now, here in the arts department activity room. Lily basically understood. Her eyelid twitched. She looked at her junior's completely convinced face, chose her words carefully, and gently suggested, Is it possible that all of this was just a coincidence? Could it be that you've misunderstood? Yvonne paused, then shook her head seriously. No way. Once is a coincidence. Twice is intentional. 3 or 4 times is definitely premeditated. And when he bought that drink and pretended not to give it to me, isn't that a classic case of playing hard to get? Lily's mouth twitched. Could it also be possible that he's just a classic case of a top-tier, clueless guy? Yvonne frowned, confused. Are there really guys that clueless? Lily thought back to her own experiences with him last year. A look of painful remembrance crossed her face. Oh yes, some people in this world are just born with a titanium-grade level of cluelessness. Taking a breath, Lily looked at Yvonne. Any other evidence? Yvonne thought for a moment and answered seriously, yes. Objectively speaking, I'm very good-looking. Just like all the other guys who have chased me or confessed to me, isn't it perfectly reasonable for him to like me? If anyone else had said that, it would have sounded arrogant. But coming from Yvonne, in such a serious tone, it truly was just a statement of fact. Lily was stumped by the question. Given her junior's looks, her logic was sound. But that Leo Hammer was the one exception. Like for being good-looking, that guy's girlfriend was the undisputed beauty queen of Berkeley. Why would he need to like anyone else? Yvonne then remembered something else, a faint blush appearing on her cheeks. Oh, right, and at the library, I heard him on the phone. He said, My girl. Lily froze for a second, then immediately understood. He was talking about Claire. Realizing the truth, Lily couldn't help but be amused. She was just about to explain when Yvonne frowned at her and earnestly asked for advice. Senior, in this situation, how should I reject him without breaking his heart? Hearing her junior's sincere question and seeing her pure, kind-hearted expression, so concerned about someone else's feelings, the explanation that was on the tip of Lily's tongue suddenly went right back down her throat. If Leo really did like Yvonne, Lily would be the first to punch that scumbag right in the eye. As Bertha Sue's future bridesmaid, she had a duty to teach him a lesson. If Yvonne really did like Leo, Lily would absolutely be the first to warn her away, explain the truth, and immediately relay the intelligence to the campus queen herself. It was her duty, but the situation now was Yvonne didn't like Leo, and Leo didn't like Yvonne. Yvonne was trying to figure out how to reject a clueless guy who didn't like her for liking her. A case of liking born from thin air. This was too good a show to miss. The words on her lips changed in an instant. Lily patted Yvonne's shoulder and encouraged her warmly. Don't worry, it's fine. That Leo guy can take it. Just be direct. Go ahead and reject him and hurt him deeply. A moment later, after giving her heartfelt advice, a cheerful Lily practically skipped away from Yvonne and walked over to Leo. He had just finished demonstrating some guitar techniques to a freshman. He looked up and saw Lily approaching. He was about to greet her when he paused, a look of surprise on his face. What are you smiling about? You look so happy. Lily tried with all her might to suppress the grin spreading across her face and the urge to burst out laughing. It was a struggle. Nothing. Just thought of something funny, ha ha ha. With Lily's arrival, the issue of booking a practice room for the musicians was easily solved. All the immediate problems were taken care of. Leo was satisfied. The only thing that puzzled him was why Lily kept sneaking glances at him and then giggling to herself like an idiot. He had no idea what was so funny. That afternoon, he went to class as usual. After class, he had dinner with his roommates at the dining hall. On the way back to the dorm, he called his girlfriend. The first thing he did was cautiously confirm, "Is my father-in-law nearby?" Claire burst out laughing on the other end. "No, I just left the new campus. I'm in a car on my way to Sterling Holdings." Leo relaxed. They hadn't seen each other all day, so the couple chattered away on the phone, sharing the day's events. Claire's day on the new campus was just normal classes. She was heading to Sterling Holdings now. The company was working on its new quarterly project planning, and she didn't have to participate directly for now, just sit in and get familiar with their recent business. Leo also told her about what he'd been up to, helping the arts department with the welcome gala rehearsals. He mentioned asking Lily for help and how she had been acting strangely all day, just looking at him and laughing like a fool, with a hint of malice and schadenfreude. It's like she's waiting to see me get into some kind of trouble. Leo was still puzzled. I didn't even do anything to offend her. Claire, of course, didn't know the full story, but his last sentence made her laugh again. Oh, but you did. You offended her a long time ago. You just don't know it. Leo was even more confused. I did. What did I do? Claire kindly reminded him. You said she couldn't get any of the hot dishes at the dining hall. Leo was completely lost. But she really can't get any of the hot dishes. What's wrong with that? It's not like I was discriminating against her. Claire nearly fainted from laughing. It took her a moment to catch her breath before she declared, Leo, you are the ultimate clueless guy. His girlfriend's laughter was making Leo lose his confidence. Am I? I don't feel like I am. But if it's really that bad, maybe I should try to change. But he heard his girlfriend say, without a second thought, change what? Don't change a thing. Then, Claire's smiling voice came through the phone. No matter how clueless you are, you're my own cute, clueless guy. Her words warmed his heart, but he didn't forget to correct her righteously. Clueless is fine, but your boyfriend is not little. There was a momentary pause on the other end. Then came Claire's sultry reply. Is that so? Talk is cheap, you know. That one sentence, wrapped in a seductive hint, was enough to make the clueless guy's blood boil the moment he understood. Damn it. Why isn't it the weekend yet? This is an emergency. A dire emergency. The weekend had not yet arrived, but Friday had. In the early morning, as the first rays of sunlight appeared, a light mist hung over the campus. Dewdrops clung to the leaves of the bushes lining the paths, trembling lazily, about to fall. Leo, out of habit, had gone to the dining hall early to buy breakfast. He stood waiting at the entrance of Building 16. Before long, the girls from room 205 came downstairs, ready to head to the new campus. They saw Leo waiting at the entrance and couldn't help but smile, nudging Claire. Claire, it's your Leo. Claire had been at Sterling Holdings until late last night and was still tired this morning, even after washing up. When she looked up and saw her boyfriend, she walked over in a daze, rubbing her sleepy eyes. Without a word, right in front of her friends, she opened her arms and habitually wrapped them around her boyfriend's neck, burying her head comfortably in his embrace. Leo naturally wrapped his arms around her, whispering reminders in her ear. "I got you a breakfast burrito today. Be careful when you eat it, it's hot." The coffee was a little cold, so I asked the dining hall lady to heat it up for me. "It should be better now, try it later." Listening to her boyfriend's chatter, Claire closed her eyes contentedly, snuggling comfortably in his arms and inhaling his warm, pleasant scent. She was too lazy to speak, just murmuring a couple of mhms in response. Her arms remained locked around him, clinging to him like a koala. Quinn, Molly, and Jade, standing to the side, could only shake their heads and sigh. The campus queen of Berkeley. So cool and unapproachable. But get her into a relationship, and she completely abandoned her image. Countless admirers would have their hearts broken. No wonder Northwood High's reputation at Berkeley was so terrible. Just recently, a freshman in their school of business had accidentally revealed he was a Northwood High graduate. And to make matters worse, he had foolishly signed up for the martial arts club. The upperclassmen in the club were already rubbing their hands together in anticipation. It was hard to comment. They could only offer a moment of silent prayer for the poor freshman. The couple snuggled for a while at the dorm entrance until Quinn and the others finally urged them on. "All right, you two. It's the weekend tomorrow. You'll have plenty of time for just the two of you at your single slaughterhouse. Let's go to class. We have to catch the shuttle." Only then did Claire reluctantly pull away from Leo. Leo handed her the breakfast and then remembered something, looking at Quinn and the others. "I was going to get you guys something too, but I got to the dining hall a little late and there was only one left. I didn't have time to wait for more." Molly waved her hands. "It's okay. I have the date cakes Leon gave me." She magically produced 2 warm date cakes from her pocket. The longer she dated him, the more the romance novel aficionado was turning into a date cake aficionado. Quinn and Jade also waved it off. No, we're good. We're already full from watching you two." That morning, after seeing his girlfriend off on the shuttle, Leo went back to attend his own classes. Around noon, after class, he went back to the arts department activity room, as usual, to check on the rehearsal progress for the various acts. Everything was going smoothly. There were basically no new problems, and the freshmen were rehearsing their acts on schedule. There was plenty of time. By the time orientation ended next Wednesday and the welcome gala was held, they should be able to put on a spectacular show. In the activity room, Leo had a brief chat with Cheryl. After confirming the status of the acts he was responsible for, he went to find the host to go over the script and was surprised to find that gibberish girl, he meant Yvonne Moreau, wasn't there. He asked about her and found out she had taken a day and a half off. She had apparently gone home to take care of something. Leo just nodded, not thinking much of it. That afternoon, the advertising track's professional courses were on the new campus. After leaving the arts department, Leo went with his roommates to the parking lot to catch the shuttle. On the way to the new campus, sitting in the back of the bus, Leo messaged Claire. She had just finished her classes and had lunch with her roommates. She said she would bring him a portion. Leo replied with an okay, and casually asked what her plans were for the afternoon, wondering if she was going to Sterling Holdings again. "You got a text back? Going to Sterling in the evening. Afternoon is free. I'll go to class with you." Reading the message, Leo's heart bloomed with joy. The shuttle arrived at the new campus. Just as Leo and his classmates got off the bus, his girlfriend walked up, holding a lunchbox. They ran out of food at the dining hall. "I ordered this for cafe nearby. Veggies, meatballs, roast duck, and a sweet soup. Eat it while it's hot." The other students in his class watched with envy, their eyes turning green. Life was so unfair. It was one thing to have a campus queen for a girlfriend, but for her to be so thoughtful and caring. Damn it. How were the rest of them supposed to live? Leo took the lunchbox and, noticing the envious stares from his classmates, instinctively clutched it closer to his chest. "What? There's only one portion. I can't share." Claire also saw the envious looks from his classmates. She thought for a moment and rummaged through her bag. "Well, I do have some cookies." As soon as she said that, the advertising students turned pale and scattered in an instant. "And no thanks. We're full. We'll be on our way." They had experienced the power of the campus queen's handmade cookies on Children's Day. The entire class had nearly been wiped out. They weren't about to make that mistake again. That afternoon, Claire attended class with Leo. With the campus queen gracing his classroom again, the advertising design professor's voice inexplicably became several degrees more magnetic and gentle. Normally, he would tear in a student's work without mercy, but now, before the scolding words could even leave his lips, he would catch a glimpse of Claire out of the corner of his eye and force them back down. He would then offer a pleasant critique. Your work is quite creative. Marco was pleasantly surprised. So, can I get a passing grade this time, Professor? The professor's face darkened. Don't push your luck, kid. After class, Claire had to go to Sterling Holdings for a meeting, so the couple had to part ways for a while. She held Leo's hand and squeezed it. Do you want to come with me? Leo thought of his dear father-in-law's face. He shivered and shook his head. You go ahead. I'm going to check out the new Mako office. I'll come pick you up later. Leo hailed a cab on the side of the road. He saw his girlfriend into the car first, watched it drive away, and then waved down another taxi for himself. The driver in the front seat asked for the address. Leo thought for a moment before giving it. 1033 Kongping Road. He had rented the office space for Mako Entertainment during the summer, but it had been almost 2 months, and this was only his second time visiting. He was a pretty hands-off boss. Since his girlfriend was heading to Sterling Holdings, he could use the free time to check in. Leo took out his phone, thinking about sending a message to his #1 employee. After a moment's thought, he put it away. He hadn't been keeping tabs for a month or two, and he was sure Isabella was living a very comfortable life at the new office. She hadn't turned in any serious drafts yet, but she had already set up her workstation with a beanbag chair and all sorts of snacks. Today, he would stage a surprise attack. If he caught the graded girl slacking off, he'd dock her bonus. That's how you save on labor costs. As he thought this, a warm, gentle smile spread across Leo's face. The driver, catching the passenger's expression in the rearview mirror, felt a chill run down his spine. This kid, he's young and handsome. Why does he smile like a black-hearted capitalist? 20 minutes later, the taxi arrived. Having been there once before, Leo confidently made his way up to the second floor of the small townhouse-style building. He pushed open the glass door and walked in. The scene in the main hall was clear at a glance. It was 3 or 4 in the afternoon on a Friday, not yet evening. The bright September sunlight streamed into the office through the floor-to-ceiling windows. A gentle breeze rustled the thin white curtains. Tiny dust particles floated lazily in the sunbeams, like dancing sprites. The atmosphere was peaceful. It was a picture of serenity. The members of the art team who didn't have class in the afternoon were already at their desks, diligently working on their drafts. In another section-off area, a few members of the programming team that Wyatt had brought over from the game development club were also at work. Chewing on their pens, their fingers flew across the keyboards, occasionally glancing at a second monitor to perform routine maintenance on the Battle Through the Heavens browser game. The soft scratching of pencils on paper and the crisp clicking of keyboards harmonized in the air. The two teams worked independently, each absorbed in their own tasks, dedicated and focused. Except for one person. When Leo's gaze shifted to the floor-to-ceiling windows, the spot with the best view, he saw a large beanbag chair on the floor. On the chair, the head of Mako Entertainment's art department was lounging comfortably. She had kicked off her shoes, her legs slightly curled. A pair of delicate feet in small white socks swung back and forth lazily. The sun must have been too bright because she had covered her face with something to block it. The object she was using looked a bit strange. Was that a fertilizer bag? Leo couldn't help but feel a question mark pop up over his head. Wait, where did the company get a fertilizer bag? Whatever. It wasn't important. Leo shook his head. Just then, some of the employees at their desks looked up and saw their boss, who had graced them with his presence. They were about to greet him enthusiastically, but Leo held up a hand, gesturing for them to be quiet. The employees were confused for a moment. Then they saw him walk slowly toward the windows with his hands behind his back. They understood immediately and shut their mouths. But as their gazes fell on their team leader on the beanbag chair, they couldn't help but feel a twinge of pity. Team leader, your luck is not good today. Leo walked up to the beanbag chair and looked down at his #1 workhorse. The clueless Isabella was completely unaware of the approaching danger. She was napping peacefully in the sun, and a steady, soft snoring sound could be heard from under the fertilizer bag on her head. Leo coughed and offered a kind reminder. Watch out. The boss is here. The keyword was triggered. The sleeping Isabella shot up in alarm. The boss. She leaped off the beanbag chair in an instant. With astonishing speed, she grabbed her drawing board and drafts and scurried back toward her desk. In her haste, she didn't have time to take the fertilizer bag off her head. As a result, she couldn't see where she was going and slammed her knee into the corner of a desk. Isabella let out a pained whimper, but she didn't have time to check her injury. She raced back to her workstation, sat down perfectly straight, and began to sketch furiously on the paper with her pencil. She was completely focused, her mind on her work and nothing else. You didn't take the fertilizer bag off your head, Leo reminded her kindly. Isabella froze, then frantically pulled the bag off her head. She looked up at Leo, a look of surprise on her face. Boss, you're here. Oh my, you should have said something. I was so absorbed in my work, I didn't even notice. She let out a series of forced, righteous laughs. Leo looked down at her feet. Is that so? Isabella guiltily tucked her bare feet under her chair. Why, yes, that's right. In truth, she wasn't really slacking off. For the new task Leo had given her last week, Isabella was giving it her all for that 30% bonus. Every day after class, she came to the office and worked like a madwoman, racking her brain to design the various Q-version cartoon-style chess pieces for Heavenly Tactics. In less than a week, she had already completed a third of the initial drafts. Leo looked through the draft she handed him and nodded, quite satisfied. Not bad. Isabella seized the opportunity, right? I pulled several all-nighters to get these done. It was so hard. So, I was just taking a tiny little break just now. You're such an enlightened and kind boss. You can understand, right? Seeing the hopeful and expectant look on her face, Leo couldn't help but smile. All right, but don't let it happen again. Talented employees always deserved a little leeway. Isabella was overjoyed and pressed her advantage. Well, since I just accidentally bumped my knee on the desk, can I count that as a work-related injury? Could the company cover some of the medical expenses? Leo gave her a sidelong glance. Sure, a Band-Aid is 50 cents. The depreciation fee for the office desk is $50. You owe the company $49.50. Remember to pay up. Isabella was instantly dumbfounded. Huh? Boss, no. Ignoring his number one workhorse rolling around on the floor, Leo turned and had a brief chat with the other employees, checking on the project's progress and maintenance. Then he casually took his leave. The moment he walked out the door, the rolling Isabella shot up and began to shadowbox furiously in the direction of the exit. You just wait, you fake Zhao. Before she could finish her threat, Leo's head popped back in. Were you calling me? Whoosh. Isabella instantly rolled back to her desk, clutching the knee that had just been re-injured on the same desk corner. Wincing in pain, she squeezed out a tearful smile for Leo. And nothing. Take care, boss. Daily bullying of the clueless Isabella. 1/1. Achievement unlocked. Leo left the office in a good mood. As he reached the ground floor, he was thinking he might as well pop over to the Happy Nest headquarters on the next street, over when his phone rang. It was David Chung. Leo answered the call. Hello. After listening to what David said, Leo's expression turned to one of surprise. Security? An interview? It had been nearly half a year since Happy Nest went live, and it was still growing at an astonishing rate. In just 6 months, it had accumulated over 100 million registered users. The daily active user count, from its flagship mini-games to the social platform itself, had reached a level that stunned its industry peers. And now, with the Battle Through the Heavens browser game as a cash cow, the daily stream of profits pouring into the company's accounts gave them the confidence to expand aggressively without having to give up equity or engage in battles with venture capitalists and private equity firms. This summer, the Happy Nest leadership had already decided to open 3 new branches. In addition to renting office space, the new branches would naturally require new teams. And the headquarters here also needed a new round of hiring. The tech department, marketing department, logistics department, legal department. The original ragtag team was now gradually becoming a formalized corporation. They needed to recruit elites from all corners of the domestic internet industry. Only after they had built up their forces would they have the capital to compete with the other giants in the industry. And in addition to the professional departments mentioned above, there was one more department that was equally indispensable. Security. In the CEO's office on the 2nd floor of the Happy Nest headquarters, David Chung spoke to Leo with a grave and solemn tone. Security is very important. For one thing, all of the company's important data is currently stored in the server room on the 3rd floor. We haven't moved it to a more secure location yet. Without adequate security personnel, if we're targeted by petty thieves or someone with malicious intent breaks in and causes damage, the consequences would be unimaginable. On the other hand, what we're about to do is to stake our claim and fight for market share with the other industry giants. We're not afraid of fair fight, but some of our competitors. They're good at playing dirty. We won't stoop to their level, but we have to be prepared. Leo nodded in agreement. The marketplace was a battlefield. Business competition might seem bloodless, but the ugly truth was often hidden beneath a glossy surface. When things got heated, framing, kidnapping, and even murder were not out of the question for some of the big players. Take his dear father-in-law, the head of Sterling Holdings, for example. Charles Sterling had dominated the regional business world for 20 years, and that Special Forces veteran was always by his side. Why do you think that was? What was he protecting against? The lines between the legitimate and the criminal worlds were not always so clear. So, Leo turned and looked at the row of men standing at attention beside them. These are the security guards you've hired? As he asked, Leo's eyes swept over the job candidates, sizing them up. David Chung had a good eye. The men standing in the office, personally selected by him, were on average between 25 and 35 years old. They weren't exceptionally tall, nor did they have the bulging muscles of gym rats, but they stood as straight as spears, as if containing an astonishing amount of power. Their expressions were solemn and meticulous, and their eyes occasionally flashed with the sharpness of a hawk. The feeling was vaguely familiar to Leo. He turned to look at David. David grinned and leaned in, whispering in Leo's ear, "You see it? They're all veterans. I have an old buddy of over 10 years, a big shot in the military. A lot of his good soldiers, after they retired, couldn't find suitable work. He asked me to help them out. I took one look and saw they were all treasures. I wasn't about to recommend them to anyone else. I brought them all over here." Then, David gestured for Leo to look at the man at the head of the line. This one, enlisted at 18, made it to Master Sergeant. He was practically a king of soldiers in the Army. After he retired, he couldn't stand the office politics at his civilian job, spoke out against his boss, got sidelined, beat the guy up, and quit to become a truck driver. When my buddy introduced him to me, he was so reluctant to let him go, he extorted 3 bottles of top-shelf liquor out of me. As he listened to David, Leo took another look at the man. He was in his mid-30s, the oldest of the veterans present. His features were plain and honest. Perhaps after being tempered by society, he had lost some of his sharp edges, his temperament becoming more steady and reserved. But he hadn't become timid. Leo looked into his eyes and could still see a burning fire in their depths. David introduced him as Shun Shur, the leader of the group and the current acting captain of the security department. Leo looked at Shun Shur and extended his hand with a smile. "Captain Shun, it's a pleasure." Shun Shur shook his hand, his tone still polite. "Don't worry, Mr. Wallace. You can leave the company's security to me. These boys have gotten a little rusty in the 2 years since they left the Army. I'll be training them again soon, getting them warmed up. After that, it'll take more than a few dozen guys to cause trouble at our company." His words were firm and confident. Leo smiled and nodded, though his mind had already started to wander. A master sergeant, half a soldier king. I wonder how he compares to Mr. Show. I should set up a meeting sometime. After chatting with David Chung for a while longer, Leo took his leave. David had wanted him to stay for dinner with the company's middle and senior management, but Leo declined, giving the righteous excuse that he had family matters to attend to. He left the company, hailed a cab, and gave the driver the address of the Sterling Holdings headquarters. As the car drove, Leo took out his phone and checked the time. He figured the meeting at Sterling Holdings should be wrapping up soon. His mood brightened. The weekend. The thought of all the things he could do with his Bertha Sue back at the LNS house this weekend. He was about to start humming. "Driver," he called out. "Hey, step on it. It's urgent." Claire was also getting antsy. She was still sitting in the conference room on the 36th floor of the Sterling Holdings headquarters. The quarterly plans and project reports droned on in her ears, but her mind had already drifted back to the LNS house. She thought of the bold words she had whispered in his ear yesterday morning, and her challenge of talk is cheap. A blush crept on her cheeks. She glanced at the time on her phone. Leo Hammer was probably already on his way. The meeting was nearing its end, and Claire was about to get up. The words, "Let's wrap it up for today," were on the tip of her tongue. Just then, a middle manager who was presenting his report said, as he was wrapping up, "And there's one more project. We finalized it last week, and it should be locked in the next couple of days. The Fenwood Old District renovation. We've given it to Aegis Construction to handle." Hearing that, Claire froze. She stopped her movement to get up. She put her phone back down on the table, and her gaze, now sharp as a knife, fixed on the manager. "Wait, that project. Say it again." At the same time, a taxi was driving through an old district street. Leo, in the back seat, had just been chatting with the driver. Hearing the local man's words, he paused. "Sir, what did you just say?" The driver replied casually. "I said, aren't we passing through Fenwood right now? The old residents here are in for some luck. Sterling Holdings took over the renovation project. The construction company is supposed to be coming to sign the contracts and hand out the money in the next couple of days. I hear they're pretty big too. What was it called? Aegis, I think. Fenwood. Old district renovation. Aegis construction." The key words flashed in his mind, triggering fragments of memory. Leo's eyes narrowed. He sat up straight. "Driver, forget Sterling Holdings. Pull over for a second." At the Sterling Holdings headquarters, on the 36th floor conference room, Charles Sterling wasn't present today. A company vice president was presiding over the quarterly summary meeting. Claire was only there to observe. However, when the Sterling family's heiress spoke, her voice wasn't loud, but it was enough to silence the entire room as everyone turned to listen. The vice president paused, then gestured for the reporting subordinate to continue. The middle manager who had been giving the report grew a little nervous, unsure what he had said wrong. He suppressed his anxiety, cleared his throat, and carefully reiterated the details of the project. I was talking about the Fenwood Old District renovation project. The situation is as follows. As she listened, Claire's mind raced, trying to recall the details. The Fenwood Old District renovation. She remembered it. In her past life, that project had been handled by Aegis Construction, and she had heard of Aegis Construction's reputation back then as well. Aegis, a construction company. On the surface, they were legitimate and reputable. In reality, they were engaged in dirty business. It wasn't just about cutting corners on construction. It was something far more sinister, with ties to organized crime. To make a profit, they deceived those above and below them, stopping at nothing. The Fenwood renovation was a prime example. In her past life, Aegis had used dual contracts, submitting fraudulent resident consent forms to the government and the client company, while in reality, they had used threats and coercion to trick the residents into signing blank contracts. At the same time, they had inflated the number of households in the district to receive more compensation money. In the end, the project blew up. The renovation was canceled. Numerous officials were implicated, and the residents of the old district were left in poverty, their hopes of a better life shattered. Claire remembered that in her past life, the client for the project had been another real estate company. That company's reputation had suffered, and they had lost nearly $100 million in finances, a devastating blow. Her thoughts returned to the present, her eyes narrowing. I never expected that in this life, perhaps due to the butterfly effect of my rebirth, the Fenwood renovation project would fall into my family's lap. She looked up at the manager, who was still diligently detailing the project, and cut him off. What's the current status of the project? The manager paused, then answered honestly. The contracts have been processed. We're about to transfer the first payment. Without a moment's hesitation, Claire declared, "Stop the payment. Terminate the partnership." Her words stunned the room into silence. Everyone at the conference table, all of Sterling Holdings' middle and senior management, was taken aback. If anyone else had said that, they would have been reprimanded. A perfectly good project, already at the stage of formal construction, wasn't something you could just cancel on a whim like a child's game. But the words had come from Claire Sterling. It wasn't just because she was the Sterling family heiress and the future successor to the company. It was because over the past 6 months, she had proven her capabilities and earned the respect of the entire group. When she spoke, most of them were instinctively ready to obey. But the manager who had reported the project couldn't help but look troubled. But the contracts have already been signed. We have no legitimate reason to terminate the partnership. The vice president also frowned slightly and looked at Claire. Claire, should we perhaps discuss this in a smaller meeting? Think it through. But Claire had already stood up, her tone firm and unquestionable. There's no need. If we don't have a reason, I'll find one. The original dual contracts, the forged official seals, the blank agreements for the 100 Phantom households created to inflate the compensation. Aegis Construction had hidden these things well. In her past life, even the authorities had struggled to find them. But she could. There's no time to waste. We need to act fast. Claire pushed back her chair and was the first to stride out of the conference room. Let's go now. Behind her, the employees responsible for the project instinctively followed. The Sterling Holdings executives filed out after her. Down the long corridor of the 36th floor, Claire walked with purpose, each step like the beat of a war drum. The eyes of the future chairwoman of Sterling Holdings were cold, but a fire burned within them. My boyfriend is waiting to pick me up and take me back to the LNS house for important business. This Aegis Construction dares to get in my way. They're asking for it. The Fenwood Old District. Having gotten out of the cab, Leo was now walking through the old streets and alleys, taking in the scenery. His memories returned. 2008, the Old District renovation, Aegis Construction. He remembered it too. But the news reports he had seen in his past life hadn't described the scandal from a corporate or business perspective. They had detailed the events from the residents' point of view. The residents had been looking forward to the renovation and new homes, but they had been threatened and coerced by Aegis, their trust betrayed. Later, they were even framed and slandered, their compensation suppressed, and they were forced to sign. In the end, it was a tragedy. The client company and the local government had also suffered a major blow to their reputation. His thoughts returned to the present, his eyes narrowing. There were countless misfortunes in the world, and if it had been something else, he, as a reincarnator, couldn't have intervened. But this had fallen on Sterling Holdings' lap, and he just happened to be here. I have to do something. Just as he made his decision, his phone vibrated. He looked down and saw a message from his girlfriend. Something came up. Going to be a little late. Leo smiled. He hadn't expected them to be in sync, even at a time like this. He typed back, "Same here. Talk when you're done." He put his phone away. Just then, he heard voices from the other end of an adjacent alley. Leo's eyes narrowed. He quietly moved to the corner of a wall, concealing himself, and peeked around. Not far away, two young men in their 20s were smoking by a wall. A few fertilizer bags and shovels lay at their feet. He overheard their conversation. "How much more is left?" "Just these 2 bags here. Industrial waste from the plating factory, used needles from the hospital. We'll bury it all. Once we pin this on them, let's see if those old geezers still refuse to sign the contracts." Leo listened and nodded in admiration. Professionals. These thugs really know their stuff. Then he took out his phone with great interest and aimed the camera at the 2 men from a distance. For an old district renovation, the biggest hurdle was always getting the residents to sign the consent forms. In his past life, Aegis Construction had used a combination of deception and coercion to get the residents to sign compensation agreements at low prices. For the few who held out, Aegis didn't have the patience. They resorted to force. Framing them with pollution was a well-practiced move. They would get their hands on chemical waste and discarded medical equipment through illicit channels and bury it in the yards of the residents' homes when no one was looking. Then they would pin the blame on them, threatening them with huge fines for environmental pollution, even criminal charges, to force them to sign away their property at a low price to settle the debt. Such tactics were common in the chaotic urban renewal projects of the era. They were shameless and despicable, but they were almost always effective. Leo sighed to himself, watching with great interest from the shadows of the corner. He held his phone steady, meticulously recording the 2 men's actions and conversation. They finished burying the evidence. He finished recording. He had been so thorough, it was like he was filming a vlog for them. Now things were simple. He could anonymously send the video to Sterling Holdings, which would give them a reason to cut ties with Aegis and get out of this mess. He would also give a copy to the local residents as a warning. Mission accomplished. He watched the 2 thugs leave, then cheerfully put his phone away, ready to go. The problem was solved efficiently, no time wasted. He just had to find a resident to give the video to, and then he could go pick up his girl. Then they could go back to the LNS house for a sweet, romantic weekend, set the vibrating friendship bed to level 7. He was about to start humming again. He walked past the corner of the alley into an open intersection, the view suddenly broadening. He was just looking for a resident to hand off the video to when he looked up and saw a familiar figure, freezing him in his tracks. Gibber, Yvonne Moreau. There, in the middle of the intersection, was a beautiful young woman carrying 2 full buckets of water, walking with a determined stride. Hearing her name, she stopped and turned. When she saw Leo, Yvonne was just as stunned. "Senior." Leo remembered hearing at the arts department that the new it girl had taken a day and a half off to go home for some business. He never expected to run into her here. He marveled at the coincidence and took a closer look at her. Today, Yvonne wasn't wearing the camouflage t-shirt from orientation. She was dressed in a simple white t-shirt and jeans, her hair tied back in a practical braid. She looked rustic and pure. It was a different look from her usual cool elegance at school, less distant, more down-to-earth, and with a bright, capable energy. Yvonne was just as shocked to see Leo here. "Senior, what are you doing here?" Leo rubbed his nose and gave a casual explanation. "Oh, just passing by." To Yvonne's ears, however, his answer had a completely different meaning. She looked at him, and a flash of understanding crossed her eyes. When she looked at him again, her gaze was more complicated. First the field, then the library, then the activity room. And now he's even followed me all the way here. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Is his affection for me really that strong? Leo was getting a little creeped out by the way she was looking at him. He coughed and asked, "What about you? What are you doing here?" Yvonne looked around and answered straightforwardly, "Me? I grew up here. This is my home." Since he was already there, Yvonne, as a gracious host, invited Leo to her home. He followed her as she led the way. She carried the 2 buckets of water in front, and when he offered to help, she simply waved him off, saying she could handle it. And she wasn't bluffing. The seemingly delicate freshman carried the 2 large buckets without swaying, her steps firm and steady, her braids swinging back and forth. She was a picture of brisk competence. They walked through the narrow alleys of the Fenwood Old District. The area was dilapidated, but it was full of life. The smell of cooking wafted from the windows of the houses, a familiar, warm scent of home. They passed many residents along the way, most of them elderly. When they saw Yvonne, they all greeted her warmly. Yvonne smiled back, calling out to them, "Andy Lee, Uncle Chun, Grandpa Lou, you should go back inside and rest. I'll get 2 buckets of water for you later. Your hen laid eggs? Great. I'll come get a couple from you when I'm cooking later." It was clear that the freshman girl had a good relationship with the residents of the old district. She was well-liked. Leo asked about it casually and received an unexpected answer. "There was a fire at my house when I was little. My parents died. I came to Fenwood with my grandma, and everyone here looked out for me. They were all so good to me. You could say I was raised by the whole neighborhood. My grandma passed away this summer. The uncles, aunts, grandpas, and grandmas here are like my family." She spoke openly, without a hint of concealment. Leo was taken aback and offered his apologies. But Yvonne just smiled and shook her head. "It's okay. My grandma saw my acceptance letter from Berkeley before she passed. She knew her granddaughter was doing well. She had a smile on her face when she closed her eyes." As she spoke, the girl lifted her head with a touch of pride and added seriously, "Besides, everyone here is my family. That's why I have to study hard and do well, so I can be better, so my grandma can rest in peace, and so I'll be capable enough to repay everyone here in the old district." Her tone was firm and full of determination. Leo looked at the freshman's confident back as she strode forward, a look of admiration in his eyes. So that was the source of the aura she had always exuded, the purity of someone who was single-mindedly striving for a goal. It was a rare quality. As if it were an afterthought, Leo asked casually, "I heard your old district is getting renovated soon?" Yvonne didn't break her stride, carrying the 2 buckets steadily as she led him to her home. She answered naturally, "The people from a construction company have been here a couple of times. A lot of people have already signed the agreements, but I think there's something wrong with the contracts. The terms are a bit vague, and the price doesn't seem right. So I told some of the uncles and aunts to wait. They're coming back today. I'm going to ask them some questions before anyone signs." Leo paused. "Today?" Yvonne replied, "Yeah." Then she turned and looked at him quizzically. "What's wrong, senior?" Leo's expression instantly returned to normal. "Nothing, just asking." But as Yvonne turned and continued walking, Leo's eyes, hidden behind her, narrowed. This changes things. In his past life, besides the dual contracts, blank agreements, and framing tactics, the reports on Aegis Construction had also mentioned that on their final visit to the old district, they had resorted to violent threats and coercion against the few residents who refused to sign. He had thought that, after getting the video, he could make a clean getaway and go pick up his girlfriend. Now, it seemed he would be delayed a little longer. Leo took out his phone and sent a text message to a number he had just recently added. "Aegis Construction, huh? They really didn't make things easy. If you won't let me leave, then you're not leaving either." A car sped through the streets. In the back seat, Claire leaned back against the seat, her eyes closed. In the front passenger seat was her female assistant, whom she had hired from the Sterling Holdings reception desk. After taking a call, the assistant turned and reported rapidly, "President Sterling, Aegis just called, pushing for the payment transfer." Claire opened her eyes, her gaze cold and indifferent. "Tell them to wait. We'll talk in person." Her tone was flat, devoid of emotion, but a deep fire burned in her eyes. "Push, push, push. A criminal enterprise of a construction company dares to push me. I'm the one who's being delayed from going home with my boyfriend, and I'm not even this impatient. So eager. Let's see how eager they are in a little while." She picked up her phone and made another call. After winding through a series of alleys, Leo finally arrived at Yvonne's home. The house was on the ground floor, old and dilapidated, blending in with the style of the rest of the old district, with a small yard in the front. He followed her inside. The interior was simple and plain. The walls and ceiling beams were mottled with age, but it was clear that the owner had taken great care to keep the place clean and tidy. Yvonne poured the 2 buckets of water into a large ceramic vat, and then casually invited Leo to sit. "Have a seat, senior. I'll get you some hot water." If it had been another girl her age, having a classmate over to such a home would have been embarrassing. But Yvonne didn't seem to mind what others thought. She was open and unaffected. Leo nodded and sat down at the small wooden table in the living room, looking around. The walls were covered with certificates and awards, almost completely hiding the plaster. They were likely all the honors Yvonne had received over the years, a testament to her hard work and diligence. There were no expensive decorations, but these certificates were perhaps the best decoration a girl could be proud of. Yvonne came over with a cup of hot water and handed it to him. "I haven't cooked yet, and I don't have any other drinks. You'll have to make do with this, senior. Leo thanked her and took the cup. It's fine, hot water is great. Watching him drink, Yvonne decided that she had to be clear with him today. The king is willing, but the goddess is not. Since she had no feelings for him, she couldn't let him continue down this path of delusion. She was just choosing her words when she was about to speak. Senior. At the same time, Leo put down his cup and looked up. By the way, what's the situation with the old district renovation? What do you know? Yvonne paused. The calm and composed way he asked the question, the faint aura he naturally exuded, it made her feel like she was a child being called on by a teacher in class. She instinctively answered obediently. I know a little. It started about 3 months ago when we heard that our Fenwood old district was going to be renovated. Then the people from Aegis Construction came to get us to sign. Yvonne explained, and Leo listened, occasionally asking a question. Yvonne would answer honestly, and Leo would nod, and she would continue. After nearly 10 minutes, she had finally explained the general situation. Leo finally nodded. All right, I understand. Yvonne was a little parched from talking. She took a sip of hot water to wet her throat, and then it suddenly hit her. Wait, why am I telling him all this? She collected herself and looked at Leo seriously again. Senior, let's talk about something serious. I know you have feelings for me. Before she could finish, she heard a commotion from outside, mixed with angry shouts. Yvonne's expression changed. Is that Grandpa Lou? The people from Aegis might be here. She immediately forgot about her heart-to-heart with her senior and shot up. Senior, you wait here. I'm going out for a minute. But Leo put down his cup and stood up as well. It's fine. I'll go with you. They hurried out of the small yard. The further they walked, the clearer the sounds of the commotion and shouting became. Yvonne's face tightened, and she quickened her pace. She was about to turn and tell her senior to be careful, but she was surprised to find that he was no longer by her side. He must have been scared. Yvonne shook her head slightly, not blaming him. It's only natural. This was her family's business. It had nothing to do with him. It was better that he left. She took a deep breath and continued to walk quickly forward. She passed through an alley and came to an open intersection. She looked up and saw 2 groups of people in a standoff. On one side were the residents of the Fenwood Old District, most of them elderly, their faces filled with anger. On the other side was a group of young men in their 20s and 30s, big and burly, with cigarettes dangling from their lips, looking calm and composed. A young man with a buzz cut at the front of the group spoke lazily. Old geezers, you had your chance. Don't blame us at Aegis for not playing nice. You didn't sign at the price we offered before. Now that we found you've been illegally dumping chemical waste, we're going to have to drop that price by 50%. As he spoke, 2 of his subordinates kicked a bag of freshly dug-up chemical waste in front of the residents. This only enraged the residents further. What illegal dumping? We never did anything like that. You're framing us. An old man at the front, Grandpa Lou, was trembling with anger. He raised his cane to strike, but the young man with the buzz cut snatched it from his hand and kicked him to the ground. Don't you know your place, old man? The other thugs from Aegis also pulled out batons from their waists, their smiles turning into sneers. Stop! With an angry shout, Yvonne rushed over and helped the old man up. Grandpa Lou, are you okay? She turned to face the Aegis thugs, her face brave and fearless, and shouted, What do you think you're doing? Using violence to coerce people into signing is illegal. If you don't leave, I'm calling the police. Her words only made the thugs laugh. The buzzcut leader was even more arrogant. The police? Go ahead. We're doing legitimate construction work. What's the problem? You're the ones polluting the environment. If the police do come, they'll settle your account first. As he spoke, his gaze fell on Yvonne's face. A greedy look appeared in his eyes, and he reached out to touch her. Little sister, you're not bad looking. Play with me for a bit, and maybe I'll put in a good word for these old geezers. Yvonne slapped his hand away and swung to slap his face. Pervert. But her hand was caught by him. The buzz-cut young man sneered. Oh, another feisty one. If I don't teach you a lesson, you'll really think he is a gentleman. He raised his hand to slap her back. But before he could, he heard a kind voice from beside him. Here, use a weapon. It'll make the lesson stick. A beer bottle was handed to him. He paused, vaguely feeling that the voice and even the style of the line were familiar. He subconsciously nodded. Thanks. When he looked up, he saw a calm and composed face. Yvonne's eyes widened in shock. Senior, her eyes reflecting the man's swift and decisive action. Who had also recognized the person, his eyes nearly bulged out of their sockets. Shit, it's you? The words had barely left his mouth when the man swung the beer bottle in a graceful arc, bringing it down squarely on He-See's head. Crack! A dull thud echoed through the air. Before He-See could react, the bottle shattered against his head, and he staggered backward, collapsing on the ground. Yvonne covered her mouth in shock, her eyes reflecting the man's swift and decisive action. Brother C. The other young men rushed forward to help He-See up. Leo casually tossed the broken bottle aside, satisfied. He had wanted to use one last time, but didn't get the chance. This time, he had finally gotten his wish. He looked up at the stumbling He-See and smiled. Long time no see. New job. He-See staggered to his feet, his head still spinning. He looked at Leo, his face twisted with venomous hatred. It really is you. Months ago, at the rollerblading rink near the old district, he had been harassing someone and had been sent to jail by this guy and his friends. And now, they had met again. Leo also nodded, marveling. What a coincidence. He-See wiped the blood trickling down his forehead and sneered. It is a coincidence. Fate has been good to me. Old and new debts. We'll settle them all today. This time, I have more people. Let's see if you have any backup now. As he spoke, He-See pulled out an iron pipe from his waist. From the alley behind him, another 6 or 7 Aegis thugs emerged. In total, there were more than 20 of them, their aura violent and menacing. The residents of the old district turned pale and backed away in fear. Yvonne, despite her courage, also lost the color in her face at the sight. She instinctively grabbed Leo's arm. Senior, you should go. Leo looked down at her hand on his arm, patted it reassuringly, and then smoothly pulled his arm away. Ahem, we shouldn't be so close, you know. She was just a young girl. It was normal for her to be scared. But he couldn't let his girlfriend find out about this, or she would be jealous beyond belief. He turned to face He-See and the Aegis thugs and smiled good-naturedly. Don't worry, I have backup. As he spoke, the sound of rhythmic, heavy footsteps approached. Everyone turned to look and saw, to their astonishment, a team of men in security uniforms jogging out from a side alley. They quickly lined up in front of Leo. The man at the front was in his mid-30s, his expression firm and steady. Mr. Wallace. He-See and his men were stunned for a moment. Then they burst out laughing. Shit, he really does have backup. He brought 8 guys. You think 8 guys can take on more than 20 of us? Ha ha. Amid the roaring laughter, Leo looked at the security captain. 8 against more than 20. Is that enough? The retired master sergeant, Shun Shur, smiled faintly. It's enough for a warm-up. Leo nodded, took out his phone, and glanced at it. He gave a casual order. Then make it quick. I'm in a hurry. Shun Shur nodded. He turned to his men. You heard him. The other 7 men roared in affirmation. In an instant, the 8 men's demeanor changed. A fierce, murderous aura erupted from them, like a pack of tigers surrounding a pack of hyenas. At the same time, at the Aegis Construction headquarters, the double doors of the conference room burst open. Claire's assistant strode in, her presence commanding, and announced coldly, as of today, Sterling Holdings is terminating its partnership with Aegis on the old district renovation project and severing all future ties. The Aegis executives, shocked and furious, slammed their hands on the table. On what grounds? Sterling Holdings has no legitimate reason. This is an unreasonable breach of contract. We'll sue you. The assistant's gaze was icy. Don't be so hasty. Our president has gone to find a reason. At the same time, in an abandoned old factory not far from the Aegis headquarters, a group of muscular men in tank tops were sitting around, smoking and playing cards. The rolling metal door was lifted by a slender, pale hand. The Aegis security guards jumped to their feet and turned, shouting, "Who are you? Who the hell let you in?" With one hand in the pocket of her hoodie, Claire brushed a stray strand of hair from her forehead. She completely ignored the menacing-looking guards. Her gaze swept to the side, where she saw the large safes that she remembered held the dual contracts and blank agreements. She nodded slightly. This is the place. Then she spoke to the person who had followed her in, her tone light. Mr. Show. His vacation cut short by a call from his young miss, the retired Special Forces veteran stepped forward. His expression was calm, as steady as a mountain. Miss, I'm here. He heard the Sterling family heiress give a calm order. Handle it. The North District Precinct. Captain Shing was, frankly, numb to the frequent appearances of one Leo Hammer Wallace. But this time was different. When he saw more than 20 thugs from Aegis Construction being marched in, all in a neat line, he was still taken aback. Good Lord, he thought. Did he just round up another entire criminal enterprise? Wait, why did I think another? Seeing the captain's shocked expression, Leo waved a hand dismissively. It wasn't just me, he explained. I had backup. Just then, A team of uniformed happiness security guards, led by their captain, Shun Shi, marched into the station with solemn, military precision. They stood at attention in the lobby, their bodies as straight as flagpoles. The aura they projected was so intense that the other officers in the precinct instinctively flinched, their hands nearly reaching for their sidearms. What the hell was going on? Why did this group look more dangerous than the criminals they were bringing in? Fortunately, Captain Xing was a man of experience. Before retiring from the service, he had served under a certain legendary special forces operator. He recognized the disciplined military bearing radiating from the uniformed security personnel at a glance. He waved his hand, signaling his officers to stand down. Walking up to Shun Shi, he looked him up and down. He noted the man's impeccable military posture, the thick calluses on the web of his hand, and the distinct indentation left by a magazine loader. Captain Xing's eyes narrowed slightly. He looked up at Shun Shi, smiled, and extended a hand. Top, how many Tier 1 guys did you train? It was military code. Shun Shi just smiled faintly. Lost count. Got out right after I qualified for the senior enlisted quarters. At that, Captain Xing was visibly moved. This senior enlisted quarters was slang for the housing reserved for high-ranking non-commissioned officers, something you generally had to be a master sergeant or higher to even apply for. A man of that rank, in any branch of the service, was a treasure. He might not be a one-in-a-million operator, but he wasn't far off. Captain Xing's gaze toward Shun Shi now held a new level of respect. His eyes swept over the group of ex-military men in security uniforms standing behind him, and he couldn't help but ask, "So, what are you guys?" Shun Shi smiled and gestured toward Leo. "We work for Mr. Wallace now." The realization dawned on Captain Xing. He turned to look at Leo, a sense of weary awe in his eyes. He's already a magnet for trouble, a real-life curse. And now he's got a team of elite enforcers. I have a feeling the entire criminal underworld of this city is about to be turned upside down. Nearby, the other officers, still unaware of the truth, huddled together, whispering. Are they from a Northwood Martial Arts Academy, too? Reasonable. Damn, he brought the instructors this time. After handing over the Aegis construction thugs at the precinct, Leo felt a sense of relief. Captain Xing was trustworthy, so Leo also gave him the video evidence and explained the situation. With both witnesses and physical evidence, the problem in the Fenwood Old District was essentially solved. Once the police report was filed and Sterling Holdings got the news, the subsequent troubles would vanish. Their partnership with Aegis could be terminated, cutting their losses. Just as he finished talking with the captain, the Aegis thugs were being cuffed and led into interrogation rooms one by one. As his old acquaintance, He passed by, Leo clapped him on the shoulder with a piece of friendly advice. Try to be a better person this time in prison, he said cheerfully. And try not to get out too early. He looked like he wanted to die. He stared at Leo in despair. Who the hell are you? He would never have imagined it. 20-something armed men against 8 unarmed ones. The odds were overwhelmingly in their favor. And yet, the other side had descended on them like tigers into a flock of sheep, cutting them down in 3 to 5 minutes without a single one left standing. The question didn't faze Leo in the slightest. I already told you, he said with a straight face. My name is Mr. Zhou. He turned to Shun Shi and the other 7 Happiness security team members, helpfully adding, this is Mr. Zhou II, Mr. Zhou III, all the way to Mr. Zhou VIII. A Zhou for every day of the week, with one extra for good measure. He was dragged into the interrogation room, his face a mask of bewildered despair. He would probably never forget the name Mr. Zhou for the rest of his life. Shun Shi walked over, curious. Mr. Wallace, what's with the name? Leo grinned. Nothing special. When you're out in the world, it's always good to have a few aliases. For safety. Shun Shi nodded in understanding. Then a thought occurred to him, and he smiled. Funny, that alias sounds familiar. I think I heard it back when I was in the service. It was a legend he'd heard of even in the southern military region. A top operator from a northern elite unit, known for being as unshakable as a mountain, who wouldn't even flinch if a landslide happened right in front of him. In the abandoned factory, the floor was littered with the groaning forms of Aegis Construction's thugs. Claire Sterling surveyed the scene, a little surprised. Mr. Zhou, didn't you just recover from your illness? How did you get your strength back so quickly? 74 seconds. One man had taken down 13. It was a major undertaking. She had figured that Mr. Zhou, still recovering, would have needed at least 2 minutes. The former Special Forces operator, who had just enjoyed a rare and satisfying opportunity to let loose, still felt invigorated. But upon hearing his boss's question, his pupils gave a subtle, hidden tremor. He couldn't possibly admit he'd been faking it. His mind raced, and when he spoke, his voice was calm and steady. I just recovered. These guys were just too weak. Barely a challenge. The Aegis thugs lying on the ground wanted to die all over again. Too weak. Barely a challenge. They weren't like the low-level goons the company sent to intimidate residents. They were the well-paid, elite enforcers. A few of them had even made names for themselves in the city's underground. Who the hell knew they'd run into a monster like this? He'd mowed them down like they were nothing. Steamrolled in under a minute. Claire nodded, accepting Mr. Zhou's explanation without question. Then she remembered something. We have the documents, so the partnership with Aegis is over. But to be safe, we should probably round up the guys they have out there threatening the residents, too. Before she could finish, her phone rang. She answered it. On the other end, her assistant's excited voice came through. Ms. Sterling, we just got a call from the North District Precinct. The Aegis construction thugs sent to the Fenwood Old District to force residents to sign have all been arrested. They even have video evidence. This time, we got them all in one fell swoop. At the same moment, back at the precinct, Leo was pulling out his phone, thinking he should send an anonymous tip to Sterling Holdings. Now that they had witnesses and evidence, he could point them to the location where Aegis was hiding the original contracts and blank agreements. That would tie up all the loose ends. He was composing a message to send to the official Sterling Holdings email when Captain Xing hung up his own phone and walked over, his face a picture of amazement. What a coincidence, he said. You bring in these Aegis criminals, and at the exact same time, Sterling Holdings reports a crime at the precinct next door. They raided an Aegis evidence stash and seized everything, all sorts of criminal proof and stolen goods. The witnesses from your end, the evidence from theirs. It all lines up perfectly. At that moment, miles apart, the lethal and savage couple both froze. The same bewildered thought flashed through their minds. There's another player in the game. Despite the surprise and a flicker of curiosity, the matter was settled. The couple, each with practiced efficiency, wrapped up their respective operations, delegated the follow-up tasks, and then happily sent a text to their significant other. All done. What a coincidence. I just finished up too. Really? No wonder we're a couple. Reasonable. They agreed on a place to meet up via text. Leo sent the location. Claire, driven by her personal ex-Special Forces operator, would come pick him up in a company car. 10 minutes later, Leo was standing at the designated intersection. He saw a plain black Mercedes pull up smoothly under the streetlights. The car stopped by the curb. The rear window rolled down, revealing a stunningly beautiful, coolly elegant face. Her eyes met his, and the iciness on her face melted away like spring snow. She smiled sweetly at her boyfriend. Where you headed? Handsome. Need a ride? Leo grinned and played along, leaning closer. No, thanks. I'm waiting for my girlfriend to pick me up. She doesn't let me get into cars with strangers. The girl raised an eyebrow, a flirtatious glint in her eyes. You have a girlfriend? Huh? It's okay, I don't mind. How about you, handsome? Would you mind having one more? As she spoke, she gently bit her lower lip. The charm she exuded in that single moment was soul-stealing, like a 1,000-year-old fox spirit. Leo nodded enthusiastically. Sure. The more the merrier. The next second, his girlfriend's hand shot out and rapped him smartly on the head. More your head, she scolded. You actually considered it, you player. Mr. Zhou drive. In the driver's seat, the ex-Special Forces operator had been in a state of shock just a second before, his pupils quaking and his heart rate soaring as he listened to the couple's role-playing. Holy shit, is this something a driver is supposed to be hearing? Now, with the order to drive, he was stunned again. The car. Should he drive it or not? Here he was, a decorated veteran, a former company commander of an elite unit, a man decisive on the battlefield. And for the first time in his life, he was faced with an impossible choice. Fortunately, in the moment he hesitated, Leo had already scrambled into the car and sat down next to his girlfriend. I was just kidding. One wife is more than enough for me. I wouldn't want anyone else. After a torrent of silver-tongued sweet-talking, he managed to coax Claire back into a pleased, smiling state. The ex-operator let out a silent sigh of relief, pressed the accelerator, and the Mercedes glided forward. In the back seat, the couple, who hadn't seen each other for half a day, were already wrapped up in affection. Claire noticed a few small, dark red specks on her boyfriend's shirt and curiously poked at them. What's this from? Leo glanced down. He remembered the splatter from when he'd smashed a wine bottle over someone's head. The next second, he lied without batting an eye. Oh, it's nothing. Ran into a guy on the street. He couldn't handle how handsome I am and got a nosebleed all over me. Then, Leo noticed the dust on his girlfriend's hands. Hey, your hands are dirty. What were you doing? Claire was just as composed. Nothing much. Just helped move some things at the office. In reality, she had been at the dilapidated factory watching her ex-operator take on a whole group of thugs. At the end, feeling an itch, she had picked up a wooden stick and helped knock out a few of them herself. Leo nodded knowingly and took her hand, examining it closely. You should let the employees handle the heavy stuff. Look, it looks like you broke the skin. Claire leaned in to look at her own finger and let out a small gasp. You're right. Ouch, it kind of hurts. She had suddenly become delicate. Leo immediately comforted her. It's okay, it's okay. I'll blow on it for you. The two of them fussed over the injury in the back seat. Watching the scene in the rearview mirror, the ex-operator in the driver's seat felt his lip twitch. The wound hurts? He thought. A wound that severe would have healed itself if you waited another 5 seconds. Half an hour ago, she was the future heir of Sterling Holdings, leading him on a daring raid into the enemy's lair, decisive and cold as ice. Now, in the blink of an eye, she had transformed into this soft, delicate girl. Was this even the same person? As he was blowing on his girlfriend's hand to ease the pain, Leo happened to glance up and see Mr. Zhou's expression in the mirror. Mr. Zhou, are you still not feeling well? He asked, concerned. Why are your eyes twitching so badly again? Mr. Zhou took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. It's an old problem. Flares up sometimes. You get used to the shaking. His calm voice was laced with a hint of sorrow. It did, in fact, only flare up occasionally. When he wasn't around these two walking disasters, he was actually perfectly fine. At 8 o'clock that night, Leo and Claire arrived back at the LNS house. The couple kindly offered to have Mr. Zhou stay for dinner, but the perceptive ex-operator righteously declined. He turned and fled. Spending another second with these two felt like a test of his cardiac health. He was a little hungry, sure, but it was better than being force-fed a diet of public displays of affection. If worse came to worse, he could always go find that Mr. Chen for a drink. With Mr. Zhou gone, it was just Leo and Claire in the house. They looked at each other. Haven't eaten yet. Okay, I'll cook. Leo went to the kitchen and quickly whipped up a few dishes. The couple sat down at the table for a simple, cozy dinner. The TV was on in the living room, and the local news was just starting. The first story was about Sterling Holdings terminating its partnership with Aegis Construction on the Old District redevelopment project, along with a list of Aegis's various illegal activities. Leo turned to Claire. Did you know about this? Claire looked completely nonchalant. Sterling Holdings has a lot of projects. I haven't heard anything. On the screen, footage showed the factory where Aegis had hidden its evidence being raided. A group of thugs were shown groaning as they were arrested. The girl at the table ate a slice of watermelon and commented coolly, "How scary." The second news story reported on a group of Aegis thugs who had gone to the Fenwood Old District to violently coerce residents into signing contracts. They had happened to run into a group of Good Samaritans who subdued them on the spot. Leo also ate a slice of watermelon, his expression perfectly calm. So dangerous. Good thing I wasn't passing through a place like that. The couple continued their happy dinner as if they had nothing to do with any of it. After eating, Claire cleared the table and went upstairs to shower. Leo went to the kitchen to wash the dishes. As he was busy at the sink, his phone chimed. He pulled it out and looked. It was a text from Yvonne Moreau. "Senior, thank you." Just 4 simple words, but he could feel the sincerity behind them. Leo smiled slightly. He thought about his unexpected encounter with the it girl of the freshman humanities class and the simple, pure, and refreshingly unpretentious side of her she had shown. He felt a sense of admiration. This gibberish girl, she was a pretty remarkable young woman. Just as he was thinking, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned to see Claire, who had finished her shower and changed into a light nightgown, leaning gracefully against the doorframe. She raised an eyebrow at her boyfriend, a slight smile on her lips. "You done yet? Let's get to bed early." As she spoke, she seemed to place a subtle emphasis on the words "get to bed." With her words, she casually swung one of her slender, fair legs. Leo's blood instantly boiled. "Done. I'm done. Let's go, let's go. Time for bed." He dropped the half-washed plate in his hand. Gibberish girl? Who cared about some gibberish? Even if the sky was falling, nothing was more important than going to bed. Tomorrow, Bertha Sue meets Yvonne the gibberish girl. Daily requests for boosts and gifts. Any bonus chapters will have to wait until the book is finished, of course. That's still a long way off. After a night of sleep filled with various positive energy positions, the next day, Saturday, dawned. The first rays of morning sun streamed into the LNS house. In the master bedroom, Leo, having slept wonderfully, woke up on his vibrating friendship bed, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. He opened them to see that his girlfriend was already up and getting dressed. By the floor-to-ceiling window, her figure was bathed in the bright morning light. She stretched languidly, her silhouette a breathtakingly perfect curve. The sight almost made Leo lose his senses. Sensing his gaze, Claire turned and smiled. "You're awake?" Leo, still wrapped in the covers, wriggled like a caterpillar to the edge of the bed. "Just woke up. Why are you up so early?" Claire gracefully walked back to her boyfriend's side of the bed and explained with a smile, "I had some things I didn't finish yesterday. I have to go back to Sterling Holdings this morning." Leo grunted in understanding. "You're not even officially in charge yet, and you're already this busy. Once you take over, you'll be working around the clock." The happy problem of having a CEO for a wife. Claire smiled and sat on the edge of the bed next to him, playfully pinching his cheek. "Can't bear to part with me? I'll be back before you know it. Besides, don't you have things to do today, too?" That jogged Leo's memory. "Oh, right. The arts department has rehearsals." The freshman welcome gala was just a few days away. Even on a weekend, they had to use every second to practice. As the producer handpicked by Cheryl, he couldn't just bail. Sitting beside Leo, Claire idly played with his hair, trying with great interest to tie a few strands on top of Leo Hammer Wallace's head into a little top knot. Leo protested, swatting her hand away and catching her slender fingers in his. "What time are you leaving?" he asked. Claire, not giving up, tried to free her hand to continue playing with his hair. "Around 8, she said casually. "The meeting is set for 9 sharp. I need to prepare some things beforehand." Leo thought for a moment. "I need to be at the arts department around 8, too. If we subtract time for breakfast, we have about half an hour left." As he spoke, his eyes lit up. "Half an hour? That's plenty of time." Claire looked up, confused. Plenty of time for what? Then she met her boyfriend's sparkling eyes and understood instantly. "Wait, I just got dressed." But before she could react, she was pulled back into the covers with a small yelp. On a bright and sunny morning, the master bedroom of the LNS house filled with the sounds of healthy, positive energy vibrations. Downstairs in the living room, the fat-headed parrot in its cage ate its breakfast and listened to the commotion, completely unfazed. Level 4, Level 5, Level 6, Level 7, 7, 7. Half an hour later, when the female master of the single slaughterhouse finally straightened her clothes and walked out the door, she slid into the driver's seat of her Maybach. The engine started with a low rumble. Little Maybach, rarely driven by its mistress, was thrilled, but also a little curious. Little Maybach. Today, the mistress's face is awfully red. Driving the Maybach on the highway toward the city, the window was slightly open. The bright sunlight and cool morning breeze caressed her face. In the driver's seat, Claire couldn't help but think back to the playful intimacy in the master bedroom just a little while ago. Her cheeks flushed slightly, but a smile unconsciously touched her lips. Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. She answered. On the other end, her assistant, Si Chun, reported respectfully, "Ms. Sterling, the new contract materials are all prepared. When you arrive, you can sign them directly with the residents of the old district." Claire grunted in acknowledgement. When speaking to subordinates, her tone became cool and carried a faint air of authority. "Proofread them again, carefully. No mistakes this time." Si Chin respectfully agreed, then hesitated. "Ms. Sterling, is it really necessary for you to go to the old district in person? We can handle this, or we could arrange for the residents to come to Sterling Holdings headquarters." Before she could finish, Claire shook her head. "No, Aegis made this mess, but Sterling Holdings has to take responsibility. We made a mistake, and we have to own it. My going there in person represents Sterling's attitude. If Sterling is to establish a foothold in this city, we can't lose the people's trust first. Go make the preparations." Si Chin understood. When she replied again, her voice held an extra layer of respect. After hanging up, Claire continued driving, organizing her thoughts. It was a shame they couldn't identify the Good Samaritans from the Fenwood Old District yesterday. However, besides wanting to personally express her apologies, she had heard that one of the residents, a young girl, had insisted that a representative from Sterling Holdings meet with them in person. Thinking about the various terms and conditions her assistant had relayed, Claire's eyebrows rose slightly. A flicker of interest ignited within her. This little girl, she thought, she's quite interesting. In the Fenwood Old District, the resident representatives were gathered in the Moreau family's small courtyard, waiting for the Sterling Holdings representative to arrive. They whispered amongst themselves, a mixture of nervousness and anticipation in the air. Yvonne Moreau sat among the crowd, the chatter of her elders buzzing in her ears, but her mind was elsewhere. Half of her was reliving the heart-pounding crisis of the day before, the feeling of post-traumatic shock still lingering. The other half couldn't stop the image of the figure who had appeared before her, like a rescuing deity, from rising in her mind. At that moment of utter panic and helplessness, his appearance had been calm, composed, carrying a strange, reassuring power. Even she, who had always been steadfastly focused on her goals, felt a slight stir in her heart as she recalled that handsome, calm figure. Just then, a few of the older residents looked at Yvonne hesitantly. "Yvonne, dear, we're not very educated. When a big boss from Sterling Holdings gets here, what should we say?" Yvonne snapped back to the present and smiled at them. "It's okay. Don't worry. When it's time to negotiate, leave it to me." Her voice was filled with confidence. As they were speaking, the sound of high heels approached from outside the courtyard. The residents stirred, their eyes instinctively turning toward the gate. Yvonne took a light breath, pushing aside all distracting thoughts. Her gaze became serious and determined. For the sake of everyone in the old district, she was prepared. Even facing a high-level executive from a massive corporation like Sterling Holdings, she had to fight for the best possible terms. The next moment, accompanied by the elegant, rhythmic click of heels, a tall, beautiful figure stepped into the courtyard. The instant the figure appeared, the residents were so stunned they almost forgot to breathe. She wore a tailored, professional suit, with a light black trench coat that gave her an air of composed elegance. Slender black high heels made her appear even taller and more graceful. Looking up, one saw a face so exquisitely beautiful it was almost unreal. Her hair was pulled back in a sophisticated style, and a cool, noble aura emanated from her naturally. Just by standing at the gate, she seemed to command the attention of everyone present. The courtyard fell silent. Claire Sterling surveyed the crowd and smiled slightly. "Excuse me, who is the resident's representative for the old district redevelopment project?" Yvonne instinctively stood up. "I am." Claire's gaze fell upon Yvonne, and a flash of surprised admiration crossed her eyes. "The little girl. She's quite impressive." At that moment, Yvonne was also looking at Claire, equally stunned by her presence and beauty. Even as proud and confident as she was, she had to admit that this was the first time she had ever met a woman who made her feel pressured. It wasn't just her looks, it was her aura. Even looking at her for a second longer felt mesmerizing. This woman, Yvonne thought, she's beautiful. Taking a deep breath to compose herself, Yvonne extended her hand with grace. "Hello, Yvonne Moreau." Claire smiled and shook her hand lightly. "Claire Sterling." "A pleasure." Leo sneezed. He rubbed his nose, completely baffled. He had a nagging feeling that something he didn't know about was happening behind his back. Shaking his head, he looked at his phone. It was almost time for rehearsal. He quickened his pace toward the arts department's activity room. On the way, he called his best friend, Kevin Zhao, to check on things in Portland. Kevin had joined Mako Entertainment with immense enthusiasm. Since returning to school, he had already been scouting for suitable office locations near Portland and had even put together a preliminary list of candidates for the evaluation and research department. "I've got 3 options for the office space," Kevin reported, his voice brimming with confidence. "I'll compare them one more time and try to haggle on the price. Just wait for my good news, Leo." Leo smiled and nodded. The right location is the most important thing. Price isn't an issue. Coming from him now, those words carried real weight. After hanging up, Leo arrived at the arts department. He spent the morning supervising the freshmen as they rehearsed their acts for the welcome gala. On one side, the girls from the dance team were as beautiful as flowers. On the other, the models from the etiquette team practiced their elegant walks in high heels and stockings. It wasn't exactly hard work. The hosting team was short one person that morning, Yvonne Moreau, so Leo stepped in to help run lines. Around noon, Yvonne returned. Her friends and classmates from the humanities department gathered around to greet her warmly. Though they didn't know what she had been busy with, they asked if everything was all right. Yvonne smiled and replied casually, "Everything's fine." It all went smoothly. As she spoke, her thoughts drifted back to that morning in her family's courtyard. The image of her first meeting with that cool, elegant, and stunningly beautiful woman. Since starting at Berkeley, she had been focused on her studies, paying no mind to campus gossip. So, unexpectedly but reasonably, she had never heard the legend of Berkeley's former campus queen. She didn't recognize her. At first, she had simply been stunned by her aura and looks. But as they talked, she found herself increasingly captivated by the woman's elegant speech and capable, professional demeanor. She instinctively felt a sense of respect, even admiration. The woman's beauty and presence were flawless, and on top of that, she possessed such mature and composed professional skills. She was almost the exact image of the person Yvonne hoped to become one day. They had finalized the terms for the old district's redevelopment, and their conversation had been delightful. Yvonne nearly wanted to make this Ms. Sterling from Sterling Holdings her role model for life. Lost in thought, she was brought back to reality by a classmate's curious question. What are you thinking about, Yvonne? Did you meet a cute guy back home? Yvonne shook her head and smiled. No, I met a very beautiful and impressive woman. Her voice was filled with aspiration. Just then, Leo walked over. Seeing gibberish girl, he greeted her naturally. Hey, you're back. Hearing the familiar voice, Yvonne looked up instinctively. Her eyes met the handsome, carefree figure she had just seen the day before. She froze. As senior. One moment, she was thinking about the amazing, beautiful woman she aspired to be. The next, this person appeared, and her heart couldn't help but flutter as she remembered him descending like a hero to save her. Her composure was slightly rattled. Leo didn't notice anything amiss and asked casually, how did things go with your family's redevelopment project? Yvonne bit her lip. The easy confidence she usually had around him was gone. It went well, she replied softly. Sterling Holdings sent a representative, and we've already signed the new contract. Leo nodded. Without Aegis Construction stirring up trouble, he trusted Sterling Holdings' professionalism and ethics. He didn't press for more details, just reminded her, by the way, about my involvement yesterday, please keep it a secret. Just say it was a good Samaritan passing by. For Leo, it was purely a matter of avoiding unnecessary trouble. His team of aliases was growing, after all. In the future, he could just let the army of Mr. Joes take the heat. However, to Yvonne, his words carried a different meaning. A good Samaritan passing by. Yvonne shook her head slightly, her feelings complicated. That's just an excuse. I know the truth. The senior had followed her all the way to the Fenwood Old District. He had stood up for her in that dangerous situation, regardless of his own safety. That gesture, it was brave and passionate. It had shaken even her, a girl who was single-mindedly focused on her goals and had no interest in romance. Originally, she had planned to be direct with him, to put an end to his feelings once and for all. But after yesterday, her own heart was in turmoil. Looking at him now, she found it hard to say the words of rejection. There are 1,000 clever tricks, but only sincerity wins a heart. The thought slipped out in a quiet murmur. She looked up at a bewildered Leo, took a deep breath, and said earnestly, Senior, let me think about this properly. Then she turned and hurried away, leaving a very handsome, very confused young man in her wake. Seriously, what was she gibbering about now? He spent the afternoon supervising rehearsals. It was evening when he finally got back to the LNS house. Claire had just returned as well. As usual, the couple enjoyed their time alone, eating dinner and then cuddling on the couch to watch TV. During their casual chat, Leo mentioned the progress of the arts department rehearsals. Claire didn't bring up her personal involvement in the Fenwood project, only mentioning offhandedly, I met a really pretty young woman today. She's got a good head on her shoulders. I liked her. Leo replied, just as casually, we have a freshman in the arts department who's gorgeous too. But I think she might not be all there, you know. Busy with Sterling Holdings meetings and running between two campuses, Campus Queen Claire hadn't paid any attention to the so-called it girls among the freshmen. And when chatting with her boyfriend, mentions of other people were just idle gossip. Neither of them gave it much thought. They mentioned it and moved on. And so, a certain coincidental misunderstanding continued, reasonably. But it was destined not to last for long, because very soon, the freshman welcome gala would arrive. A little preview. Tomorrow's chapter is called The Social Death of One Yvonne, the Gibberish Girl. Also a request for boosts and gifts. That weekend, the masters of the singles slaughterhouse only had evenings to themselves. The vibrating friendship bed in the master bedroom barely operated at full capacity. During the day, Leo had to continue supervising rehearsals at the arts department, while Claire was busy with her own responsibilities at the School of Business. At first, Leo was curious. What are you busy with? Besides giving a welcome speech to the freshmen, what else is there? Unlike him, who was practically an honorary member of the Humanities Arts Department, Bertha Sue had never joined any student organizations. If anything, because of her boyfriend, she spent more time in the humanities building than her own. This often earned resentful glares from her fellow business majors whenever they crossed paths on campus. It was as if their beautiful daughter had been stolen away by some punk. As a result, the School of Business held the deepest animosity toward Northwood High out of all the departments at Berkeley, which brought to mind that poor Northwood High graduate who had enrolled in the business program and then joined the martial arts club founded by a business school upperclassman. He had perfectly sidestepped every possible path to survival. A true death seeker. To Leo's question, Claire answered casually. The business school is also rehearsing for the welcome gala. This year's freshmen aren't very enthusiastic. They think orientation was tiring enough, so they've been slacking off in rehearsals. The student council can't get them to listen. As a last resort, the department president begged me to go and give them some encouragement. It might have been a last resort, but the effect was spectacular. When campus queen Claire made an appearance, casually dressed, and simply strolled through the business school's rehearsal room, the freshmen were stunned. They had heard rumors of a legendary senior from their department, a campus queen whose beauty and presence completely overshadowed all the freshman beauties. At first, they had been skeptical, but seeing her in person, both men and women were so shocked they were rendered speechless. It was no exaggeration. When someone with the looks and charisma of a top celebrity appears before you in real life, the impact is hard to describe. In front of strangers, Claire maintained her usual cool and distant demeanor. But this time, she was there at the student council president's desperate request. So, she thought for a moment, and then offered a faint smile. "You've all been working hard." And then, the freshmen in the rehearsal room practically exploded. "HLO, senior. We're not tired at all." When they learned that the beautiful Claire would be attending the welcome gala in person, all the freshmen in rehearsals were practically injected with adrenaline. "Don't worry, senior. We'll practice hard. Brothers and sisters, let's pull an all-nighter tonight." With renewed vigor, they threw themselves back into rehearsal. And so, for their respective freshman welcome galas, the lethal and savage couple each had their own duties. Claire had to make more trips to the new campus where the business school's gala was being held, which only exacerbated their long-distance relationship. They comforted each other. "It's okay. It'll be over after the galas." For the next few days, Leo spent all his time outside of class at the arts department, rehearsing with the freshmen until late every night. It was exhausting, but the effort paid off. The freshmen's coordination improved, and the performances grew more polished with each run-through. Leo's relationship with them also grew closer. They would chat and laugh during breaks. The only exception was a certain girl of the humanities department. Lately, during rehearsals, she seemed to be intentionally avoiding Leo. When they did run into each other, Leo would greet her warmly, but Yvonne would just give him a complicated look before scurrying away. It left Leo completely bewildered. What's up with Gibberish Girl? Finally, Wednesday arrived. The 2-week freshman orientation ended to the cheers of the students. And that night, in the grand auditorium on the old campus, the humanities department's welcome gala finally began. With 10 minutes to go, the backstage area was a flurry of activity as everyone made their final preparations. Shouts of encouragement echoed through the controlled chaos. More than 10 days of rehearsal had given everyone the confidence they needed. Cheryl Chun and Leo stood backstage, watching the freshmen bustle back and forth with costumes and props. "This wasn't easy," Cheryl said with a sigh of relief. Leo nodded in agreement. It really wasn't. He had been roped into being the producer, and it had been exhausting. All sorts of problems had cropped up during rehearsals, and he had been the one to solve them. Like the freshman guitarist, who had been a total amateur at the start, Leo had spent the entire week drilling him until he could play his one song proficiently. He had almost given up and decided to play it himself. But in the end, everything had worked out. Cheryl's thoughts drifted. But no matter how well you prepare, there's always a chance for something unexpected to happen on stage. She subconsciously glanced at Leo. Last year, during his own performance, a certain girl had walked through the crowd with a bouquet of flowers, causing a sensation. Remembering, Cheryl asked, "By the way, where's Claire? She didn't come today." Leo shook his head. "No, she has something else tonight." The humanities gala was tonight. The business schools was tomorrow, and today was their final dress rehearsal. As a senior, Claire had to be there to offer one last round of encouragement. It wasn't a huge loss. Last year, Leo had been a performer. This year, he was just a producer. Just then, they heard cheers from the audience beyond the curtain, followed by the rousing opening music of the gala. The humanities department's freshman welcome gala had officially begun. The 10-plus days of hard work and sweat had not been in vain. The gala proceeded smoothly. The very first act, a street dance performance, earned a thunderous roar of approval from the audience. Subsequent acts, including a romantic duet, a comedy sketch, and a runway walk by the etiquette team, brought the energy in the auditorium to a fever pitch. Backstage, Leo watched and nodded in satisfaction, feeling a sense of relief. His phone buzzed. It was a text from his girlfriend, asking how things were going. He smiled and typed back that everything was fine. Claire replied with a hint of regret that she couldn't be there to see the show. Leo smiled again and typed a comforting reply. After a few more affectionate texts, Claire had to get back to her own rehearsal, so they ended their chat. Leo put his phone away. The show continued. The next act was a magic show, and the hosts who had just finished their segment were huddled to the side, reviewing their scripts. Yvonne Moreau was among them. As she reviewed her lines, she happened to look up and meet Leo's gaze from across the backstage area. He smiled and gave her a thumbs up. But Yvonne, for some reason, blushed and quickly looked away, as if she couldn't bear to meet his eyes. Lao, is she nervous? Or did she eat something weird? He wondered. Why has Gibberish Girl been so shy lately? The gala continued smoothly. Tonight, every act at the Humanities Department's Welcome Gala was met with either thunderous applause or gales of laughter. Backstage, as performers moved on and off stage, their faces were alight with excitement and joy. They high-fived each other in celebration. But occasionally, their eyes would drift to the corner where the hosting team stood, a hint of admiration in their gazes. Everyone had worked hard, but the hosts were the busiest of all, and also the most dazzling, especially a certain Miss Moreau. Tonight, Yvonne wore a silver-white evening gown. Her diamond-studded high heels accentuated her tall, slender figure, creating a breathtaking silhouette. She was so elegantly beautiful that it was almost hard to look directly at her. Every time she stepped into the spotlight to introduce an act, a wave of awestruck praise would ripple through the auditorium. She was graceful, poised, and exuded an air of proud confidence. She controlled the pace of the gala flawlessly. Backstage, even the upperclassmen from the arts department couldn't help but whisper in admiration as they watched her. The it girl of humanities? After tonight, I'd say she deserves to be called this year's freshman campus queen. Standing next to Leo, Cheryl couldn't hide her appreciation either. That girl, she really has a bit of your Claire's flair. One possessed an innate, cool nobility, an otherworldly quality, a natural air of authority. The other was focused and driven, striving toward her goals with a single-mindedness that made everything else fade away. The former was more mature, her power level maxed out. But, given time, the latter might very well be able to catch up. Leo smiled. Yes, she does. As the night deepened, the gala was more than halfway through, but the atmosphere in the auditorium was only getting more electric. One act after another delivered a perfect performance. The backstage crew breathed a collective sigh of relief. It looked like this year's gala would be a complete success. At the after-party, they were going to eat and drink their fill. Even Cheryl, who had been on edge all night, finally began to relax. She pulled out her phone to call a nearby restaurant and order a lavish feast for the celebration. Just then, it was time for the next act, a female solo performance. Yvonne, who was announcing this segment, glided onto the stage in her silver-white gown. She smiled at the audience and announced, "The next performance is a solo by a female singer. The song is Girl with Wings. The performer is..." The audience erupted in applause. Backstage, a crew member called out, "Next up, female solo, get ready to go on." But suddenly, there was a commotion. The crew member called out several more times, growing frantic. "Where is she? Lingling Zhou, hurry up." A girl ran over, her face panicked. Lingling ate something bad earlier, and her stomach is killing her. She can't go on. Everyone froze. Cheryl snapped back to reality. What's the next act after this? A department member quickly replied that the dance troupe was next, but they were still in makeup and couldn't go on yet. The acts after that also needed time to prepare. Because of this sudden mishap, the smooth flow of the gala was about to grind to a halt for at least 5 or 6 minutes. The backstage crew desperately gestured to Yvonne on stage, mouthing the situation to her. At the same time, Cheryl spun around to face Leo. Now, Leo had already grabbed the freshman's guitar and was about to go on stage. "I know, I'll fill in." Even though the host had already announced a female solo, there was no better option at the moment. A male guitar performance was better than dead air. However, just as Leo was about to step onto the stage, and as the crew signaled to Yvonne, she saw their gestures and understood the predicament. Her mind raced. Then, as if making a decision, she turned back to the audience, raised the microphone, and finished her announcement with unshakable calm. "The performer is me." A hush fell over the stage and the backstage area. The freshmen in the audience gasped, their eyes wide with surprise. Then, their surprise turned to excited anticipation, and they broke into a thunderous cheer. They thought it was a planned surprise, never imagining that their beautiful host would be singing herself. Backstage, everyone was stunned for a moment. Yvonne is singing herself? Cheryl was the first to react, her face lighting up. "That works. This will be even better. Hey, Yvonne's a broadcasting major. She can sing, right?" Leo paused, watching the girl in the silver-white gown on stage. He raised an eyebrow in appreciation. "We're about to find out." As the auditorium quieted down once more, A pure white spotlight descended from the ceiling, illuminating the stage. It was so bright it felt hot on the skin. Feeling the gaze of the entire audience, Yvonne took a light breath and gripped the microphone. When the melody of the song began to play through the speakers, she parted her lips and began to sing. When I was still a naive girl, I met love but didn't understand love from the past until now. You could tell her voice wasn't professionally trained. For a broadcasting major, vocal lessons were just an elective. Her technique was a little raw, but her voice was beautiful and clear, with the pure quality of an uncut gem. The audience erupted in applause again, more enthusiastic than before. Backstage, the arts department members were overjoyed. Cheryl was ecstatic. Yes, yes, yes. Perfect. But just then, disaster struck again. As Yvonne followed the melody, completely engrossed in her song, the music from the speakers suddenly stopped. The atmosphere she had just created vanished, leaving her voice sounding thin and exposed. A murmur of confusion rippled through the audience. Backstage, chaos erupted. What the hell? What's going on? Cheryl was about to explode. Where's the sound guy? Where's the damn sound guy? The hell with the sound guy? After the show, I'm going to personally chop him into 361 pieces. As chaos reigned, Yvonne, on stage, didn't expect this either. Her voice tightened instinctively. Singing was her weakest skill. She had rarely performed in front of such a large audience. When the music cut out, her heart clenched, and a wave of nervousness washed over her. But I can't stop. I have to keep singing. I have to see this gala through to a successful end. You're Yvonne Moreau. You can do this. The determination in her eyes returned. Controlling her tightening voice, she gripped the microphone and continued to sing a cappella. Believe me, I can fly. I'm singing in the sky. Even if the storm covers me, I'm not afraid to start again. Her clear voice echoed through the auditorium, slowly calming the restless crowd. But without the music, it was impossible to avoid a slight waver, a hint of being off-key. The audience's hearts clenched in sympathy. They worried for her. If the brave host's impromptu performance ended in a disaster, she might become the laughingstock of the entire university. But Yvonne continued to sing, her voice trembling slightly, but her spirit unbroken, until a familiar, beautiful melody began to play, filling the empty space behind her voice. Whoa! A gasp went through the audience. Everyone craned their necks, trying to see where the music was coming from. It wasn't the sound system. It seemed to be coming from behind the singer. But the spotlight only illuminated Yvonne. The rest of the stage was dark. On stage, Yvonne, equally stunned, glanced behind her. Only she could see, in the shadows outside the spotlight, a familiar, handsome figure who had quietly stepped onto the stage. He was leaning against a corner, holding a guitar. The fluid melody flowed from his skillful fingers. Leo looked up and gave her an encouraging smile. Perhaps it was the familiar music, or perhaps it was the magical, calming power in his smile. But Yvonne's nervousness vanished. Just like that evening a few days ago, when that figure had appeared before her like a rescuing deity, bringing her a sense of peace and strength. Yvonne took a deep breath and began to sing again, her voice no longer tense. She became more confident, more immersed in the song. It was supposed to be a simple love song about a young girl's heart, but from the girl in the silver-white gown, it became something more. It shed the affectations of romance and became a song about diligent, hard work. A song about her hopes and dreams for herself, about her passionate yearning for the future. Confident, proud, open and honest. Believe me, I can fly. I am singing in the sky. As she reached the chorus, the entire auditorium was swept up in the emotion, the atmosphere electric. I hope one day to see you again, to proudly face you, and say it was your wind that carried me. It wasn't a song for a lover. It was a girl's sincere gratitude and remembrance for a lost family member. For some reason, it brought tears to the eyes of the students and faculty alike. But the girl on stage was smiling brightly as she sang the final line. I won't be lonely, because you are always here. The guitar fell silent. The song was over. Leo quietly slipped backstage. On stage, the girl in the silver-white gown looked up to face the entire auditorium, which had erupted in a deafening standing ovation. That night, the Humanities Department's welcome gala was a resounding success. At the after-party in a small restaurant near the east gate of the university, glasses clinked and laughter filled the air as everyone celebrated. Cheryl Chun chased the sound guy around the room with an empty beer bottle. After 3 rounds of drinks, Leo stepped out into the courtyard for some fresh air. He looked up at the bright moon and the few scattered stars. He heard footsteps behind him. He turned to see Yvonne walk out and stand beside him. She had had a few drinks, and her cheeks were flushed, but she was still clear-headed. They stood side by side, looking up at the night sky. "When I was little," Yvonne said softly, as if to herself, "my grandma used to tell me stories about gods in the sky. I always wanted to grow up and see them for myself. Later, when I grew up, I learned there were no gods. But I still want to try to fly a little higher, and then a little higher. Even if I couldn't see the gods, maybe it was because I wasn't trying hard enough, not flying high enough. If I fly high enough, even if there are no gods, at least my grandma will be able to see me." Leo listened patiently, admiring the night sky himself. "Where there's a will, there's a way," he commented softly. "Neither mountains nor seas can stand in your path." He glanced at Yvonne and smiled. "Believe in yourself. You can do it." Yvonne's eyes lowered, her eyelashes fluttering. She didn't reply. As Leo looked back up at the sky, he heard her soft voice beside him. "Senior, I think I might like you a little." Leo turned, stunned, to meet her clear, steady gaze. The girl seemed to have finally made up her mind. She looked at him, took a deep breath, and said earnestly, "But more than liking you, I have more important goals to achieve. So I'm sorry. I can't accept your feelings." With that, she gave him a deep, solemn bow, full of apology and resolve. Then she turned and walked away, as if a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders, leaving a certain handsome young man standing there, giant question marks slowly forming above his head. Seriously, what the hell was that? The Humanities Gala was on Wednesday night. By Thursday morning, the news had spread throughout Berkeley. Humanities freshman It Girl saves the day, stuns auditorium with surprise performance. The guitarist who had accompanied her had remained in the shadows, his face and name unknown. But Yvonne, who had captivated the entire audience, was now a star. A student reporter had taken a photo of her in her stunning silver-white gown and uploaded it to the school forums and the Berkeley page on Happy Nest. It was flooded with likes and comments. The freshmen unanimously hailed her as the new campus queen of their year. All other contenders were now considered a distant second. However, the buzz had not even lasted 24 hours when, after the School of Business's gala on Thursday night, an even bigger story broke. Explosive. Berkeley's sophomore campus queen gives speech at business gala, coolly elegant and unmatched in beauty. The freshmen who had just been worshiping Yvonne clicked on the new post, ready to defend their queen. They opened the photos, ready to criticize. And then they saw the cool, noble, and impossibly beautiful woman in the pictures. They were stunned, and they instantly switched sides. Holy SD. Guys, get in here. This is the Campus Queen Plus. Coincidentally, one of the subjects of this campus-wide debate, Yvonne Moreau, also saw the post. She froze when she saw the familiar face in the photo. Then, a look of delighted surprise crossed her face. The beautiful woman she so admired was a senior at her own university. Without hesitation, Yvonne pulled out her phone and eagerly sent her a text message. Friday morning, the lethal and savage couple were at the dining hall for breakfast. While waiting in line, Claire mentioned casually to her boyfriend, "By the way, that pretty young woman I told you about? Turns out she's a freshman here. We're planning to meet up sometime soon." She had him save their spot in line while she went to get utensils. As Leo was waiting, he happened to see a familiar, beautiful figure. Yvonne, holding a tray, also saw him and froze. "Senior?" Leo didn't think much of it and waved casually. "Morning. Getting breakfast." The whole incident from the other night was a mystery to him, but he just figured Gibberish Girl was being her usual gibberish self. But while Leo was perfectly at ease, Yvonne was filled with guilt. No matter what, she thought, I rejected his feelings. He's putting on a brave face, but who knows how much he's hurting inside. She was just about to offer a few carefully worded words of comfort when she heard footsteps approaching. She turned instinctively, froze, and then her face lit up with surprise. "Senior." Claire walked over with the utensils and was just as surprised and happy to see Yvonne. "What a coincidence." Then she looked at Leo. "You two know each other?" Leo was equally surprised. "You two know each other?" Yvonne was stunned. "Why you two know each other too?" Claire chuckled. "Of course." And then, as Yvonne stared in stunned silence, Claire casually and naturally linked her arm with Leo's. "This is my boyfriend," she said. "You can call him brother-in-law, if you like. A long overdue, big chapter. I had to take the time to really flesh out Yvonne's character. I really like all the characters in this book. I feel bad when I don't write them properly. A shameless request for gifts." Yvonne Moreau, female, 18 years old. For 18 years, she had been proud and confident. For 18 years, she had cultivated an unwavering belief in her own excellence. It was enough that even when she saw Senior Claire casually loop her arm through his, Even when she heard her senior's breezy introduction of their relationship, her first thought, though she was stunned into a stupor, was a brave, trembling, instinctive one. The senior is the senior's boyfriend. So, the senior fell for someone else. And that someone is me? However, the moment that trembling conclusion formed, Yvonne's brilliant mind, the mind that had earned her the top arts and culture scores in her entire province, was already running a full comparative analysis of herself versus the senior standing before her. After a swift and objective assessment, the result was so overwhelming that her initial thought began to crumble. For the first time in her life, she began to doubt whether her initial judgment had been flawed. Because compared to Senior Claire, she didn't seem to have the upper hand in any category. The three of them found a table in a corner of the dining hall. Yvonne was still in a daze, her brain's CPU overloaded as she tried to process the situation. Claire started by explaining to Leo how she had met Yvonne, glossing over the details of her involvement in the redevelopment project. The part about her and Mr. Joe single-handedly raiding Aegis Construction's stronghold was conveniently omitted. She simply said that after terminating the contract with Aegis, she had gone as a Sterling Holdings representative to apologize to the Finwood residents and sign a new agreement, and had met Yvonne, the residents' representative, in the process. Then, Claire asked Leo how he knew Yvonne. For Leo, aside from the secret redevelopment business, there was nothing to hide. "I told you about her," he said without hesitation. "She's the one who paid me $20 for a $6 breakfast." Claire blinked, then it clicked. That was little Yvonne. She remembered now. Yvonne, finally snapping out of her daze, looked at Claire dumbfounded. "Senior, you knew?" Claire laughed. "Of course. He told me he was getting breakfast for his roommates when a freshman just walked up, took his food, and slapped a 20 in his hand. He was so happy about the free money he made, he couldn't stop talking about it." Yvonne didn't hear the second half of the sentence. All she heard was the first part. For his roommates. Yvonne's world went dark. Her head was buzzing. Only one thought remained. "So, I was wrong?" Just then Leo, getting into the story, added, "And that wasn't the only time. I found one of those watermelon sodas we used to drink in high school at the campus store. I hadn't even opened it yet when I ran into, Yvonne. I don't know if the orientation heat got to her, but she just snatched it right out of my hand. Didn't even offer to pay. I thought she was robbing me." "Ha ha ha ha." Leo burst out laughing. Yvonne's world went dark again. The buzzing in her head intensified. Thought she was robbing him. So, that was a misunderstanding, too? Noticing Yvonne's dazed expression, Claire thought she was just embarrassed and offered a comforting smile. "It's okay. It's just a small misunderstanding. From now on, if you want anything to eat or drink, don't be shy with your senior. Just ask." Leo nodded enthusiastically. Yeah. It's fate that we keep running into each other like this. If we hadn't met here today, I never would have known you knew Claire either." Claire. The Chinese nickname was Ayan. Hearing that sensitive keyword, Yvonne froze again. And then, her intelligent brain finally rebooted. The entire sequence of events clicked into place. The world went dark for a third and final time. It felt like the sky was falling. Ayan. Yen. So it was that Ayan. Yvonne Moreau. Female. 18 years old. Born on a sunny day in March. Socially executed on an equally sunny day in September. The couple chatted happily, not noticing the changing expressions on the young woman's face across from them. It was only when Claire glanced over that she noticed. "Yvonne, what's wrong? Your face is so red." Yvonne snapped back to reality, forcing a calm expression. "Oh, it's nothing. Probably just a sunburn from orientation." Leo looked at her, at the face that was as red as a ripe apple. "A sunburn from orientation? Were you standing next to the sun?" The short breakfast came to an end. It was Friday, and Claire had gotten up early just to eat with Leo. Now she had to catch the campus shuttle to the new campus for class. Leo, naturally, walked her to the shuttle stop. At the dining hall entrance, they said their goodbyes to Yvonne. She maintained a calm facade, trying not to let anything show. "Well, see you later, seniors. I have something to do, so I'm heading back to my dorm." Claire, who had taken a real liking to her, held her hand and smiled. "It was a short visit today. Let's meet up again soon. You should come over to our place sometime. I'll cook." Leo quickly added, "I can cook too." Yvonne managed a polite smile. "Okay, in next time for sure. Goodbye, seniors." She politely said her farewells, turned, and left. Her steps seemed a bit hurried, almost as if she were fleeing the scene. Watching her go, Claire smiled and asked her boyfriend, "So what do you think? Isn't she adorable?" Leo nodded in agreement, then added, "She just gibbers a lot." With steady steps and a composed expression, she returned to her dorm room. She pushed open the door. Her roommates greeted her, and she responded calmly. She walked slowly to her desk and sat down. She took a pillow and placed it on the desk. She took a deep breath. Slowly, she buried her head in the pillow like an ostrich. Her friends called out in concern. Yvonne, what's wrong? Are you okay? A muffled reply came from the pillow. I'm fine. Yvonne lifted her head slightly, the scene from the dining hall replaying in her mind. She could no longer control it. Her pupils began to quake violently. Overcome with shame, she buried her head deep into the pillow once more. Aya, huh? Aya ha, aya ha. Social death. This was the absolute definition of social death. After seeing his girlfriend off on the campus shuttle, Leo headed to class. This morning's elective was classic world literature. The professor was waxing lyrical about Russian literature, from Dostoevsky to Tolstoy, from Crime and Punishment to War and Peace and the Brothers Karamazov. When he reached the Grand Inquisitor chapter of the latter, he even recited it with passion. A new humanity will arise. And yet, I cannot part with God. The students were either half asleep or secretly reading novels on their phones behind their textbooks. The professor was usually lenient during electives, but today he was on a roll. He randomly called on a student. You, what are your thoughts on this chapter? The unlucky victim was Marco Shaw. Huh, what inquisitor? He had been completely engrossed in the latest chapter of Battle Through the Heavens. Now he was totally lost, but he was quick on his feet. He cobbled together something based on the novel he had just been reading. Oh, that inquisitor. He's no good. We cultivators. We humans must rely on our own strength and cultivation. Our own strength and self-improvement. We must train hard. Man can conquer heaven. 30 years east of the river, 30 years west. Don't bully the young and poor. Don't bully humanity for being poor. He was on a roll now. God? What's his power level? My archmage is just as good as any god. The class erupted in laughter, but the old professor seemed satisfied. He stroked his beard and nodded. An unusual take, but you have your own perspective. A dialectical and critical view of religion. The protagonist of the original work was limited by his era. After a round of praise, he asked, puzzled, but which religion does this archmage belong to? I don't believe I've heard of it. Marco enthusiastically recommended, Professor, you should read a novel called Battle Through the Heavens. It's a masterpiece of our national literature. And so, the fame of Battle Through the Heavens spread in a very peculiar way. Having narrowly escaped, Marco sat down to the admiring gazes of his classmates. Leo couldn't help but smile. The incident did get him thinking. Regardless of the literary merits of web novels, their influence was undeniably growing. The gaming rights to a single IP, Battle Through the Heavens, were already a goldmine, supporting a large part of Happy Nest's operating costs. That meant the other top-tier web novel IPs were all untapped treasures. He had already secured the rights to all of Potato's future works, but he couldn't let the others slip by. The success of the browser game had made the licensing department at Scrollverse greedy. Despite their own failed attempts at game development, they concluded that the problem wasn't their production quality, but the lack of a popular platform like Happy Nest. So, they had initially rejected Mako Entertainment's offer, and instead tried to partner directly with Happy Nest. The partnership request landed on David Chang's desk. He had, with a single stroke of his pen, forwarded it to his chief strategy officer with a note. Game IP adaptation and publishing is handled by our CTSO. And so, the matter came full circle. When the head of Scrollverse licensing department, completely unaware of the truth, obsequiously called the mysterious CSO of Happy Nest, the handsome young man on the other end of the line was smiling brightly. When he had approached them as the CEO of Mako Entertainment, they had given him the cold shoulder. Now that he was using his main account, they were the ones begging at his door. A partnership? He thought. Sure, but this time, it's going to cost you. Leo. A soft voice pulled him back to reality. He looked up at his girlfriend sitting across from him. What's up? At a cafe table near the new campus, Claire looked at him curiously. I called your name a few times. What are you smiling about? You look so devious. Leo blinked and rubbed his face. You do. Claire nodded firmly. You do. It looks like you're plotting against someone again. Leo waved his hands, his expression righteous. Of course not. Your boyfriend is an upstanding citizen. I never plot against people. It was lunchtime on Friday. After his morning elective, his class had taken the shuttle to the new campus for their afternoon major courses. Claire had just finished her morning classes there and hadn't left yet, so the couple had a little more time together. They had found a window seat at a cafe. While ordering, Leo had been calculating how to best squeeze every last drop out of the sycophants at Scrollverse. The devious ideas were flowing so freely, he had almost laughed out loud. Now, reminded by his girlfriend, he quickly reined it in. Just then, their food arrived. As they ate, Claire asked again what he had been thinking about. He couldn't tell her about Happy Nest yet, so he vaguely said he was looking for new projects for Mako Entertainment. At the mention of Mako Entertainment, Claire, who had recently enjoyed her tour as the boss's wife, was immediately interested. By the way, you sent Kevin to Portland to set up a team and lease an office, right? How's that going? It's going well, Leo replied. He just leased the space last weekend, and I sent him the money. He's really on top of it, even posted job listings. He called me on the way here to say he just got the first application. At the same moment, in an apartment in Portland, Serafina Vance closed the resume she had just submitted on her laptop, a satisfied smile on her face. She picked up her phone and called the company's logistics department. Hello, cancel my ticket to Berkeley. I've found a better point of entry. She hung up and looked at the job posting on her screen. Her eyes lingered on the words Mako Entertainment, Portland branch, and manager, Kevin Zhao. The social butterfly of the Quad's Portland marketing department smiled, her expression growing more confident. How fortunate, she thought. I was just about to book a ticket to Berkeley. It was a good thing she saw the job posting in time and learned that the owner of Mako Entertainment had come to Portland himself. Talk about a lucky break. Serafina elegantly ran a hand through her wavy hair, a seductive, confident curve on her lips. A beautiful woman, she mused, really does have all the luck. Daily request for boosts and gifts. That afternoon, Leo had class on the new campus. This time, Claire wasn't there with him. She had mentioned at lunch that she had to attend a meeting at Sterling Holdings. Leo was quite disappointed. It wasn't that he enjoyed the envious stares he got when his girlfriend sat with him in class. It was simply that when Bertha Sue was present, the professors, especially the one for advertising design, were always on their best behavior. In other words, they were a little more diplomatic when tearing into their students' subpar work. Still, Leo was curious. Does Sterling Holdings have that many meetings? And you have to attend every single one. Perhaps large corporations were different from startups. Mako Entertainment was one thing, but even at Happy Nest, despite being the CSO and one of the two top decision makers, he only dropped by 3 or 4 times a month and attended a handful of meetings. Of course, his own laziness was a factor not to be considered. Claire explained, there are a lot of meetings. Normally, not all of them are mandatory, but since I'm preparing to slowly take over, I need to familiarize myself with every department. Once I've sat in on all their meetings, I can decide which area to officially take over first. She paused, thinking, I think today is Project Department 3, something about their physical shopping mall ventures. I can also take a look and see if there are any good locations for Mom's Sweet Return Bakery to expand into. She hadn't been particularly interested in the meeting, but that thought energized her. Mom was planning to expand to this city this year, wasn't she? I can really plan this out. Her sense of duty as a daughter-in-law was burning bright. For the sake of her mother-in-law, she had decided. The third quarter plan for Sterling Holdings would begin with helping Sweet Return Bakery conquer the city's pastry market. Seeing his girlfriend's sudden fiery ambition, Leo was amused and quickly tried to calm her down. Don't be in such a hurry. The bakery only has 2 branches in Northwood. We can't take such a big leap all at once. One step at a time. Besides, if Mom moves here, Dad will still be back at the factory in Northwood. They've been married for 20 years. It wouldn't be right for them to start a long-distance relationship now. Claire considered it. That was a fair point. But she quickly had a new idea. That factory Dad works at doesn't have much business now, right? He has a lot of free time, enough to go fishing at the Riverwalk every day. Why don't we just have him come here, too? I can arrange a job for him. Sterling Holdings had thousands of positions. But for her father-in-law, it had to be something special. What position would be suitable? Claire mused thoughtfully. On the 37th floor of the Sterling Holdings headquarters, in the chairman's office, Charles Sterling suddenly sneezed. He looked around, confused. He felt a sudden chill, as if something dangerous was watching him. Shaking his head, he chuckled. He was probably just overworked and not getting enough rest. In a rare moment of leisure, he found himself missing the simple days of summer in Northwood. He suddenly felt the urge to talk to his old friend. Charles eagerly picked up his phone. He was going to give his big brother a call. After lunch, Leo parted ways with his girlfriend and headed to his afternoon advertising design class. As expected, without campus queen Claire in attendance, the professor was back to his peak form. He tore into the students' design assignments one by one. This is terrible. Redo it. Absurd. This is just absurd. If you get a job in advertising with this level of skill, do me a favor and don't mention my name. The students endured the verbal assault, their heads bowed in shame. They kept shooting pleading glances at Leo, whispering desperately, Leo, our savior. Please bring Campus Queen Sterling to design class from now on. We're begging you. It was actually quite reasonable that an entire class of Berkeley's best and brightest couldn't produce a decent drawing. The advertising program wasn't designed for art students. It was for liberal arts majors. The real artists were in the School of Art, and the best of them had already been recruited by a certain someone for his company, Mako Entertainment. After class, Leo took a cab to his company for his routine inspection. This time, he didn't catch a certain Miss Zhao slacking off. The moment he walked in, all the team members were hard at work, and Isabella Zhao, their team lead, was the model of diligence, hunched over her drawing tablet. Seeing her boss, she nodded righteously. "Boss, you're here. Go ahead and look around. I'm busy with this draft." Then she went back to her drawing, the very picture of a dedicated employee. Leo turned to Wyatt Way. "Has she been this diligent all day?" Wyatt nodded. "Yep. And she paid me $10 to not tell you that she spent the afternoon drinking smoothies and playing garden grab on the beanbag chair." His sincere betrayal made Isabella jump to her feet. "Way, you took the money and still sold me out. What about our friendship?" Wyatt looked indignant. "You think you could buy my loyalty for $10? Do you know what my relationship with my bro is worth?" He turned to Leo, his expression fawning. "Bro, I did good, right? Can I get another one of those rescue cards?" $10 was nothing to the heir of the Way family, but a rescue card, which could be used to summon aid when being tormented by Claire the Demoness. That was priceless. As a boss, Leo was actually very lenient with his employees. Talented subordinates deserved special treatment. Besides, the company was still in its startup phase. They didn't need the rigid rules of a large corporation. A relaxed, harmonious work environment was important. As long as the employees completed their tasks on time, everything else was negotiable. He only occasionally checked in on Isabella to make sure she wasn't getting too addicted to garden grab. It wasn't that her work was suffering, but he couldn't have her pulling all-nighters, playing games, and then working overtime to catch up. Before this, Leo had never imagined someone could play garden grab all night long. He'd seen his share of gaming addicts, but Isabella was the first farm game addict he'd ever met. He was even considering asking the tech department at Happiness to create a custom anti-addiction system just for her, limiting her to 1 hour of playtime a day. He glanced at Isabella, who was wringing her hands nervously. He decided against it. That would probably be worse than death for her. He asked about the art team's progress for the week. He was satisfied. At this rate, the first drafts of all the Q-version character models for Heavenly Tactics would be finished in about 2 more weeks. The art team was on track, but the main bottleneck was still the tech department. Leo called Wyatt into his office and closed the door. The development report was not encouraging. Wyatt sighed. "Bro, I'm not slacking off. This game isn't like the Battle Through the Heavens browser game, where we could just use an existing template. Even though you gave us the framework for Heavenly Tactics, we still have to grind out all the details and balance the stats. Otherwise, we'll just end up with a half-assed game full of bugs." Leo nodded in understanding. "Is there any way to speed things up?" "Yeah," Wyatt said bluntly. "Spend money. Hire more people for the tech department. And it would be best to have a dedicated QA team to take some of the load off." "The QA team is already in the works," Leo said without hesitation. "Kevin has the office space in Portland. Once he's hired the team, they can coordinate with you. As for expanding the tech department," he paused. "You make the call. If you find someone suitable, just hire them. You don't need my approval. Money is not an issue." "Money is not an issue?" Wyatt stared at Leo, a strange expression on his face. Leo saw his look and chuckled. "Don't worry. You don't have to pay for it. The revenue from the Battle Through the Heavens browser game came in this month. The company has money now." The joke about Wyatt funding the company was just that, a joke. Leo wasn't that kind of ruthless capitalist. Wyatt breathed a sigh of relief. Then his expression turned sycophantic again. "Bro, I can pay for it. Just give me a couple more of those rescue cards, and we can talk about anything." Leo was exasperated. "How scared are you of my Claire?" It was clear now. The young Master of the Way family was genuinely terrified of his wife, convinced that Bertha Sue was going to handle him one of these days. But then again, he could ask his wife to cooperate. She could find a reason to give Wyatt a hard time, and then he could swoop in and save the day, using up one rescue card. Then he could turn around and sell him a new one. A self-sustaining cycle. A joint venture. They could get rich just from selling rescue cards. The thought was thrilling. He decided he would discuss it with Bertha Sue. As Leo's face lit up with a devious grin, Wyatt got a chill down his spine. "Bro, what are you plotting? Your smile is scaring me. You know what? Forget the rescue cards. I'll go work overtime on the code." Leo clapped him warmly on the shoulder, his smile as gentle as a spring breeze. "What are you afraid of? I wouldn't hurt you. Rescue cards? Of course. I've got 100 of them. After leaving Mako Entertainment, Leo dropped by the Happy Nest headquarters next door. The office was in a frenzy. They were planning a new event for the start of the school year, another round of the Campus All-Stars contest. It was a bit cliché, but college students loved it. It was an easy way to generate buzz and convert the new freshmen into registered users. Of course, that was a job for the various departments to coordinate. The company's CSO had more important things to do. Sitting comfortably on the couch in the CEO's office, the handsome young man took a sip of hot tea. That's right. Resting and preserving his strength was the CSO's most urgent task. David Chung, fresh from a meeting, rushed into the office with a stack of files. He saw Leo lounging on his couch and gnashed his teeth in envy. You are really something else. But they were partners. The kind-hearted Leo couldn't bear to watch his friend work so hard alone. He thought for a moment, then stood up. As David watched, first with hope, then with confusion, Leo walked to the door. Well, I won't watch you then, he explained. It's too hard to bear. My wife is waiting for me to pick her up. You keep up the good work. David, get out. Just as he left the Happy Nest headquarters, he got a call from his girlfriend. She was done with her meeting at Sterling Holdings. Leo hailed a cab and picked her up, and they headed straight for their sweet little nest, the LNS house. In the back of the cab, they chatted. Leo told her about Wyatt and the rescue cards. Claire's eyes lit up. We could offer a monthly subscription, she suggested. Leo was impressed. He gave her a thumbs up. Brilliant. The black-hearted couple had reached an agreement. From now on, they would implement a sustainable policy of draining the Way family heir of all his resources. On the way home, they both got texts from their roommates. It was the weekend, and their friends were planning a get-together at the single slaughterhouse. They had already gone grocery shopping and were on their way with food and beer. Leo and Claire were happy to hear it. They had both been so busy lately. A relaxing weekend with friends was just what they needed. The only one who wasn't happy was probably Lily Lou. An hour later, when everyone was gathered at the house, Lily, who was also free to join them today, was chatting with Claire. She heard the story about the new campus queen and the couple's involvement. Lily was stunned. Wait, I didn't even get to enjoy the drama. You guys already resolved it. Daily request for boosts and gifts. I've been so busy writing during the holiday that I haven't spent enough time with my wife. I need to figure out how to make it up to her. Gossip. Hearing Lily Lou's phrasing, Claire Sterling paused, a look of surprise and curiosity crossing her face. By the time Lily, the it girl of the humanities department, had explained the whole story, Claire, Berkeley's famously cool and composed campus queen, nearly collapsed with laughter. Her peals of laughter were so loud that they drew the attention of everyone else in the living room. And even Leo peeked his head out from the kitchen. What's going on? What's so funny? Since the story involved the reputation of a certain freshman beauty, Claire had to fight to regain her composure. She and Lily waved everyone off, insisting it was nothing. Once everyone had turned back to what they were doing, Claire, still suppressing a smile, shook her head gently. So that's what happened. Now it all made sense. No wonder Yvonne's face had been as red as a ripe apple when they'd run into her at the dining hall that morning. The way she fled after saying goodbye was less of a departure and more of a full-blown retreat. Anyone else in her shoes probably would have died of social anxiety on the spot. Lily, on the other hand, looked disappointed. I was waiting for the drama to unfold. I can't believe the show was over before I even got a ticket. Claire glanced toward the kitchen, watching her boyfriend's figure as he went back to cooking. Her eyes were filled with an undisguised smile. This kind of thing, she mused, could only happen to my guy. It was true. Anyone else wouldn't have the charm to attract the attention of so many beautiful and popular girls. And anyone else, walking through a field of flowers, wouldn't have been able to emerge so completely untouched. What was his secret? It was nothing complicated. He was just an oblivious guy. You think he's operating on another level, but he's actually 500 floors underground, having drilled straight through the Earth's core. Lily nodded in fervent agreement, then turned her attention back to Claire, leaning in eagerly. So what exactly happened? Spill the details. Having missed the live gossip, a second-hand account from a witness was the next best thing. Claire didn't hold back, smiling as she recounted the morning's events for her future bridesmaid. She described Gibberish Girl's apple-red face, and Leo's unique perspective, his point-blank assessment that he'd made $14 and his assumption that he was being mugged by a freshman. After hearing the story, it was Lily's turn to nearly die of laughter. She cackled so hard she almost fell backward off the couch. Ha ha ha, oh my God, I can't. What is going on in Leo's brain? How can one person be so completely oblivious? Claire covered her own mouth, giggling. You, of all people, should know the answer to that. Lily's laughter stopped. The fun and games were suddenly over. She lunged, mortified, trying to tickle Claire. Claire Sterling, I'm going to kill you. We were having a perfectly good time, and you just had to go there, didn't you? Claire dodged gracefully, a playful smile on her face. Looks like someone else is blushing now. Same ripe apple look as little Yvonne. Lily's teeth clenched in mock fury. All right, that's it. If I don't take you down today, my name isn't Lily Lou. She pounced again, a whirlwind of flailing limbs and feigned rage. Claire sidestepped nimbly, offering a kind warning. Be careful. You're not going to win this fight. As if to prove her point, when Lily lunged again, refusing to believe it, Claire anticipated the move and slipped to the side. Thrown off balance, Lily stumbled forward. With lightning reflexes, Claire grabbed Lily's wrist with one hand and supported her waist with the other, gently guiding her forward. She pushed Lily's soft body down onto the couch, then pressed in, one knee pinning Lily's thigh, holding her firmly in place. Claire brushed a stray strand of hair from her forehead and looked down at her future bridesmaid, raising an eyebrow with a triumphant smile. Give up. Pinned to the couch, Lily struggled to turn over. She looked up at Claire, about to protest, but stopped. A lock of Claire's hair had fallen, brushing against her cheek. It carried a faint, pleasant scent that, combined with Claire's impossibly beautiful face so close to her own, made Lily blush unexpectedly. Her voice softened. Okay, I give. You win, all right? Now get off. Before Claire could move, Marco and Dylan happened to walk by, pool cues in hand, on their way to the billiards table. They froze, witnessing this strangely intimate scene. The two brothers of Gotham stared, their eyes wide. Holy shit. Claire turned to look at them, completely unfazed. Something wrong? Lily shot them a glare. Haven't you ever seen girls goofing around before? Go play your stupid game. Faced with a ferocious Lily, Marco and Dylan wisely made themselves scarce. Claire helped her bridesmaid up from the couch, smiling as she asked, You okay? Lily sat up, composed herself, and waved a hand. I'm fine. Though she said she was fine, she couldn't help but sneak another look at Claire, her heart still fluttering. Damn, a campus queen's charm is on another level. I almost got turned. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Leo was busy at the stove. Marco and Dylan peeked their heads inconspiratorially. Now, be careful. I think Lily Lou might be your new rival. Leo's hand paused mid-stir. He turned around, completely bewildered. The hell are you talking about? At 7 in the evening, a huge spread of hot food covered the table. Everyone gathered around, and before eating, they clasped their hands together and recited their customary prayer. Praise be to Chef Leo. Then, they happily dug in. As they ate, the conversation naturally drifted to the recently concluded freshman welcome galas. Among Berkeley's dozen or so schools, the Arts Department Gala was usually the most anticipated, famous for its beautiful students. This year, however, the humanities and business schools had stolen the show. The latter wasn't because of the event itself, but because of a certain campus queen from the sophomore class who had given the opening remarks. Claire's speech had sent shockwaves through the entire freshman class. The former was because of the freshman girl, Yvonne Moreau, who had saved the day at the last minute. Her performance of Girl with Wings had stunned the entire auditorium. Everyone was still buzzing about it. The girls from room 205, who hadn't been able to attend the humanities gala, were particularly regretful. Marco chimed in smugly. You guys don't even know the half of it. When Yvonne was singing, the sound system broke. The person who jumped in to save the day with an acoustic guitar was our very own Leo. All the girls instantly turned to stare at Leo in amazement. That really happened. Claire put down her chopsticks. She propped her chin on one hand, a slow, knowing smile playing on her lips as she looked at her boyfriend. Is that so? This is the first I'm hearing of it. In the living room, inside his cage, Reasonable, who had been happily pecking at his food, suddenly felt his feathers stand on end. He flapped his wings frantically. Killer instinct. Killer instinct. The party at the single slaughterhouse was a huge success. As for Marco's accidental revelation about Leo Hammer Wallace's heroic rescue of a damsel in distress at the gala, Bertha Sue was uncharacteristically magnanimous and didn't pursue the matter. At the dinner table, she had commented lightly, "It was a good deed. Perfectly reasonable. He should be commended." That night, after their friends had left and they had washed up and gone upstairs, the mistress of the single slaughterhouse gave the master of the house a very thorough reward on their vibrating friendship bed. The reward was so thorough that it had Leo yelping. "Hey, why you be gentle? Bertha Sue, are you part puppy? Why are you biting me?" The girl's waterfall of dark hair spilled over her fragrant shoulders as she leaned close, nibbling on his ear and breathing warmly against his skin. Someone has a real talent for attracting bees to honey. The it girl killer lives up to his name. Leo was still confused. Huh, who did I kill now? His dense, oblivious nature made Claire chuckle. But a chuckle was one thing. This behavior could not be encouraged. A boyfriend had to be disciplined when necessary. Who did you kill? I'm going to kill you first. With that, the mistress of the house opened her mouth and sank her teeth viciously into her boyfriend's neck. Berkeley had too many pretty girls, and the freshman class was full of them. It was impossible to guard against all of them. She needed a new strategy to properly declare her sovereignty. The next day, Saturday morning, Leo came downstairs, stretching his arms and rubbing his neck. Reasonable flew over excitedly to greet him and beg for food. Good morning, King Dad. Good morning, King Dad. When the parrot saw the various teeth marks and hickeys on his master's neck and shoulders, he squawked in alarm. Whoa, critical injury. Critical injury. Somebody get a doctor. A doctor. Leo swatted the parrot away and touched his neck, wincing. Last night's Foxy Claire had been absolutely wild. What nine-tailed fox? She was a beautiful vampire, and not the innocent Bella from Twilight, either. She was clearly the seductive, man-eating Catherine from the Vampire Diaries. As he lamented, Leo began to reflect. Alcohol is poison. Lust is a blade that scrapes the bone. Wallace, you can't go on like this. You need discipline. A young man must be wary of temptation. Just as he finished his self-critique, he heard footsteps from upstairs. Claire, also freshly showered, emerged from the bathroom and started down the stairs, yawning sleepily. Seeing her boyfriend, she asked casually, "What are you thinking about?" Leo looked up. Before him was a girl in his own oversized t-shirt, descending the steps with a lazy grace. Her bare feet touched the stairs as lightly and elegantly as a Persian cat. A pair of long, pale legs extended from beneath the hem of the shirt, glowing softly in the bright morning light. The sight was breathtaking. Leo immediately scrambled over to her. Nothing. I was just about to make breakfast. What do you want? I'll make it for you. All thoughts of discipline vanished into thin air. A young man must be wary of temptation? What does that have to do with me? I'm a 30-year-old man who's been reborn. Middle-aged men have to seize every moment. All the suffering of being single in my past life has to be made up for in this one. After the couple had breakfast at home, they found themselves with a rare moment of leisure. The welcome galas were over, and there were no meetings at Sterling Holdings that weekend. With nothing to do, they settled comfortably onto the couch and turned on the TV, putting on a movie to pass the time. Bright morning sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, filling the living room with a cozy, relaxed atmosphere. The movie was boring. After watching for a bit, they lost interest but didn't turn it off, letting the soundtrack play as background noise. Claire leaned against one end of the couch, casually flipping through a novel. One leg rested lazily on the floor, while the other was propped comfortably on her boyfriend's lap. Leo was on his phone, handling some work matters. He reviewed Happiness quarterly financial statements and website growth charts, then opened IM on his phone and started typing with one hand, discussing game design for Heavenly Tactics with Potato. Why was he typing with one hand? Because his other hand wasn't idle. It was instinctively playing with his girlfriend's delicate foot, which rested on his knee. He squeezed one toe, then another, and then gave her foot a good rub. Claire noticed her boyfriend's restless hands. She put down her book and shot him a look that was both exasperated and amused. What are you doing, playing with worry beads? But then she considered it. The massage actually felt pretty good. She changed her tune. Fine, you can keep going. With that, she nonchalantly placed her other leg on his lap. Do this one too. They had lunch at home as well. In the afternoon, they decided they didn't want to stay cooped up inside anymore. After some discussion, they agreed to go to the campus library. The atmosphere there was more productive than their lazy setup at home, and Claire needed to check out a few books for one of her classes. So the couple headed out. Before leaving, Leo deliberately put on a hoodie. It wasn't that it was getting cold in September. It was purely to cover the very conspicuous hickeys on his neck. It would be too cruel to let all the single students on campus see them. They were his classmates, after all. He couldn't bear to rub it in their faces every day. That kind of public display of affection was best left for the readers of sappy romance novels. And so, the lethal couple spent the afternoon at the library, diligently studying. By the time they emerged, it was early evening. The sky was filled with a spectacular, painted sunset. The campus speakers were playing Alicia Keys' 2007 hit, No One. The smooth, melodic rhythm seemed to infuse the campus air with a colorful romance. Students walking along the paths hummed along softly. Leo and Claire had been planning to head back to the LNS house when they passed a university events bulletin board. A poster caught Claire's eye. and she stopped, waving her boyfriend over. Leo walked over curiously. What did you find? Claire smiled and pointed at the poster. Look at this. Leo followed her finger and read the poster's contents aloud. The Griffin Players of Berkeley present a fairy tale production in rehearsal, Cinderella. Starring Yvonne Moreau. Hey, it clicked. Leo's face showed his surprise. Gibberish Girl is in this. Claire raised an eyebrow, a keen interest in her eyes. Want to go see it? Daily request for series boosts and gifts. According to the poster, a rehearsal performance of the fairy tale was scheduled for 7 o'clock that evening. There was still plenty of time for Leo and Claire to grab dinner first. It was too much trouble to go back to the LNS house and then return to campus, so the couple found a build-your-own noodle bowl place on the food street just outside the East Gate and ordered 2 bowls. Though they called it a simple meal, the noodle sets that arrived at their table were anything but. Each order came with a small clay pot and nearly 10 small dishes of various toppings. The pot was already heated, the broth inside boiling, and they added the raw meat, ham, seafood, and mushrooms one by one. Finally, they poured in the noodles. Customers could then add chili oil, vinegar, or cilantro to their liking. Leo and Claire had ordered the same set, but when it came to toppings, Miss Sterling had a particular fondness for cilantro. She added several large pinches to her bowl. Leo shook his head in disgust. What's so good about cilantro? Of all the strange foods in the world, bitter melon was number 1, and cilantro was number 2. But Claire recommended it enthusiastically. It's delicious. You should try some. Leo shook his head so hard it was a blur. No way. I've hated that stuff since I was a kid. Claire arched a brow, her tone righteous. Leo hammer. Are you telling me you won't even try something new for your girlfriend? Leo pouted. Don't even start. When I eat durian, you, Bertha Sue, won't come within 30 feet of me. When that tactic failed, Claire switched to pleading. Please. At a nearby table, some students who recognized the campus's lethal couple witnessed this exchange. Seeing the great Claire Sterling acting so cute, their jaws almost hit the floor. They were overwhelmed with envy and indignation. Damn it. Just eat it. If you won't eat it, let me. I love cilantro too, Claire. We could be together. In the end, Leo ate it. The reason was simple. When pleading didn't work, Bertha Sue had leaned in and whispered in his ear, You take a bite of this, and tonight I'll let you take a bite of me. The words had barely left her lips before the entire bowl of cilantro on the table was swept into his pot. Then, face flushed and voice booming, he called out to the kitchen, Hey, boss. Another bowl of cilantro over here. Oh, no reason. I just suddenly feel like trying new things. After finishing their noodle bowls and paying the bill, the couple left the restaurant with full stomachs. Leo smacked his lips, still savoring the taste, a look of wonder on his face. That's weird. I hated it as a kid. But now that I'm older, it's actually pretty good. Claire linked her arm through his, smiling. See? People should be more open-minded and try new things. You never know if you like something until you try it. Leo nodded in complete agreement. You're right. Hey, in that case, maybe tonight we should try some new positions. I mean, new things. He'd let his inner thoughts slip out and quickly tried to correct himself. Unfortunately, his girlfriend had already heard him. Claire shot him a sidelong glance, her cool assessment delivered in 2 words, You perv. She then started walking ahead. Leo hurried after her. Hey, what about your promise? I took a bite of cilantro, so you have to let me take a bite. Bertha Sue, a deal's a deal. By the time they left the noodle house, it was only 6:30. They still had half an hour before the Cinderella rehearsal began. The couple wasn't in a rush, so they strolled along the street outside the East Gate to walk off their dinner and kill some time. They passed a newly opened craft shop that sold mostly handmade woven goods. The shop also had balls of yarn and needles set out on small stools, allowing customers to try their hand at some DIY projects. Claire's interest was piqued. She turned to her boyfriend. It's almost fall. How about I knit you a scarf? Although she had given him many gifts, a handmade one would have a different meaning. Leo was slightly surprised. You know how to do that? Claire raised an eyebrow. Never tried, but it has to be easier than cooking, right? With that, she eagerly approached the shop owner, sat down on a stool, and picked up a complimentary set of needles and yarn, ready to test her skills. 3 minutes later, she had managed to prick all 10 of her fingers a total of 11 times. One prick was a little deep and had drawn blood. She looked down as her boyfriend carefully wrapped a bandage around her finger. The slight sting made her hiss softly. Leo, who was busy playing doctor, looked up. Claire's brow furrowed. Knitting is evil. From now on, we hate it. Leo, amused and exasperated, nodded in agreement. Right. I'll have Mr. Joe shut this place down tomorrow. A smoothie from the shop next door managed to cheer up the injured girlfriend. By the time they left, it was 6:55. It was almost time. Tonight's rehearsal of Cinderella was being held in the small 500-seat auditorium diagonally across from the campus's east gate. The couple strolled over, arriving in about 5 minutes. Since it was just a rehearsal and not a formal performance, there was no need for tickets. They simply pushed open the doors and entered the auditorium. To their surprise, the 500-seat hall was almost completely full. Normally, a university drama club's rehearsal wouldn't draw such a crowd. But Leo and Claire immediately guessed the reason. The promotional poster had made the leading lady's name incredibly prominent. At least half of the audience tonight was here for the freshman campus queen. Looking toward the stage, they saw the rehearsal had already begun. It was the first act. Under the stage lights, Yvonne Moreau, dressed in a simple, plain dress, walked gracefully to the front of the stage. She smiled confidently at the audience and began to perform. This was Cinderella's monologue. Even if my hands are covered in soot, I will believe that the stars will light my path. Even if life is hard, I will believe that my dreams will one day come true. It had to be said, the girl who had placed first in the provincial arts exams was genuinely talented. Under the spotlight, Yvonne's delivery was clear, her voice pleasant, and her performance full of emotion, perfectly capturing Cinderella's optimistic and resilient character. The audience responded with enthusiastic applause. Claire's eyes filled with admiration. Little Yvonne is really good. Leo scanned the front rows and spotted 2 empty seats. He grabbed his girlfriend's hand. Come on, let's sit down first. They hurried down the aisle, crouching low so as not to disturb anyone, and quickly took their seats. The auditorium's chairs were old and in need of repair. Although the couple tried to be as quiet as possible, Leo's seat still let out a loud creak as he sat down. Claire lightly smacked her boyfriend, whispering gently. Leo looked wronged. It wasn't me. This chair is broken. Because their seats were close to the stage, the noise was audible to the actors. Yvonne was in the middle of her lines, fully immersed in her character's emotions. The creaking sound from the front right of the audience made her subconsciously glance in that direction. And then, she saw the familiar couple. Yvonne Moreau, female, 18 years old. For 18 years, her life had been a smooth and prideful journey. Until 2 days ago, on a Friday morning in the campus dining hall, when she met her Waterloo. Yvonne times, my girl, square root. Senior gives her a drink, times. Freshman robs him, square root. Senior is hopelessly in love, times. Freshman's imagination runs wild, square root. That Friday night, huddled under the covers in her dorm room, she replayed the scenes in her mind. The memories were like boomerangs, flying back to pierce her through and through. The great campus queen's head felt like a whistling tea kettle, steam practically pouring out as she burned with shame. Her roommates almost woke up from the heat, looking around in confusion. Wait, aren't we in the South? Did they turn the heat on in the dorms? It took her 2 full days of psychological self-regulation to get over it. Gibberish girl had to hypnotize herself repeatedly. It's okay, it's okay. It's in the past. Just pretend it never happened. The best way to forget something is to keep yourself busy. With freshman orientation over, the new semester officially began. Yvonne, who had always held herself to high standards, resumed her routine of early morning runs and diligent class attendance. After class, she would head straight to the library to study ahead. She also actively signed up for various campus activities, joining the student government and the Griffin Players Drama Club. The drama club had just started rehearsing a new fairy tale production, and Yvonne had eagerly volunteered. With her flawless looks and outstanding professional acting ability, she easily won the role of Cinderella. She had performed in 2 rehearsals, both to rave reviews. The audience and her fellow cast members were full of praise. Gradually, amidst the familiar sounds of admiration, Yvonne began to rebuild her confidence. It's fine. I'm still just as outstanding as ever. That little mishap was just a tiny pebble on the road of life. It's over now. Filled with this renewed optimism, Yvonne Moreau took the stage for the 3rd rehearsal of Cinderella tonight. And then, by a stroke of coincidental and reasonable fate, she was greeted by a certain reasonable couple. Yvonne Moreau, female, 18 years old, the new campus queen of Berkeley, the new leading lady of the Griffin Players. On stage, she was poised and graceful, her performance captivating thousands of her fellow students. 1 second, she was standing under the spotlight in front of hundreds of people, confidently delivering her monologue with perfect clarity. The next second, she saw 2 familiar figures in the 3rd row of the front right section of the audience. She froze. Her heart practically stopped. The impeccable delivery she was so proud of faltered, her voice cracking as the words caught in her throat. A stir went through the audience. Many students looked surprised and confused. What was that? Did her voice just shake? Fortunately, Yvonne's reaction time was fast. She took a deep breath, forced her racing heart to calm down, and continued her monologue with a composed, confident smile. She had narrowly averted a stage disaster. The audience, reassured, became engrossed in the performance once more, murmuring their praise. In the front row, Leo was also impressed. She's not bad at all. She can host, she can act. Gibberish Girl is pretty versatile. Beside him, Claire couldn't help but smile. It's a natural talent that most people can't learn. After all, most people don't have such a rich and adorable inner monologue. On stage, the play continued. Cinderella's stepmother and stepsisters made their entrances. The cast worked together seamlessly, delivering a dedicated and brilliant performance that earned continuous applause from the audience. Of course, the most dazzling person on stage was still Yvonne as Cinderella. Her acting was superb, her delivery clear, and she brought the character to life, making the audience ache for her. I can do all the chores, but I will never give up my pursuit of happiness. Under the spotlight, Cinderella lifted her head. The dirt on her face could not hide her stunning beauty, nor the hope and determination for the future shining in her eyes. In the front row, Leo and Claire both nodded in appreciation. She really is good. They both knew Yvonne well enough to understand her background and her unwavering determination to succeed. In that respect, she was quite similar to the fairy tale Cinderella. Perhaps that was why she could embody the role so authentically. However, Leo was a little puzzled. Why does it sound like her voice is trembling when she says her lines? Indeed, while all the actors were focused on their performance, Yvonne, as the lead, was the model of professionalism. But as she performed, seemingly immersed in her role, her eyes kept darting nervously toward the front right of the audience. Every time she glanced over and saw the familiar couple, the words in her mouth would come out with a slight tremble, a little shake. The rest of the audience noticed it too, whispering among themselves. Is that a vibrato? I don't remember her doing that in the first two rehearsals. What's going on? Maybe it's a new vocal technique. Having reached this conclusion, the audience members had a collective moment of enlightenment, their admiration growing. As expected of our campus queen, so professional, perfectly reasonable. Unwittingly, she had earned another round of praise from the audience. Little did they know that on stage, Yvonne Moreau, who appeared calm and completely absorbed in her performance, was actually devoting half her attention to the couple in the audience. She couldn't help it. While acting opposite her castmates, she snuck another glance toward the audience. As fate would have it, she happened to see the reasonable couple in the corner of the front row, whispering and laughing about something. The beautiful senior was leaning in close to the senior's ear, almost nibbling on it. Cinderella's line stopped halfway through. The audience was once again taken aback. But a second later, Cinderella quickly recovered and continued her performance as if nothing had happened, dispelling their confusion. Only the actors playing the stepmother and stepsisters, who were close enough to see her subtle facial expressions, were left stunned. What's wrong with Yvonne? Her pupils are shaking so hard they're about to turn into blurs. Daily request for series boosts and gifts. Thank you to Tsang Yunxing Yun Zhongzhu for the character summit. The rehearsal performance of Cinderella ended perfectly. The students who had come to the small auditorium tonight left satisfied, still discussing the play and marveling at the unique vocal technique their new campus queen had developed. It had been well worth their time. Leo and Claire also rose from their front row seats. They weren't in a hurry to leave. Claire, intrigued, pulled her boyfriend along, wanting to go say hello to Yvonne. Berkeley was full of beautiful women, and this year's freshman class was no exception. But only Yvonne, with her unique personality and temperament, had managed to capture Claire's interest. They had just reached the backstage area when Yvonne, having changed out of her costume, emerged from the dressing room. Their paths crossed. Claire smiled and waved. Yvonne. Leo waved too. Yo, gibberish. He caught himself before the nickname slipped out, quickly raising his water bottle and taking a few gulps to cover. Gurgle, gurgle. Ahem. Good evening, freshman. Seeing Claire and Leo approaching, the look of relief on Yvonne's face vanished, replaced by a momentary blankness. Her first instinct was to turn and run. She forced herself to stay. A smile was plastered on her small face. Hi, seniors. Her voice was still laced with guilt. Leo was too dense to notice, but Claire saw it, as clear as day, finding it more amusing than anything. She smiled and took the younger girl's hand, chatting for a bit and praising her performance. Yvonne was almost embarrassed by the compliments. Not at all. If you were on stage, senior, you would have done much better than me. The great Yvonne Moreau was usually confident and proud. If anyone else had praised her, she would have accepted it without a second thought. But in front of Claire, the one person who made her feel inferior in every way, she was uncharacteristically modest and well-behaved. Of course, a part of it was the fear of her social death being exposed. The sight of Berkeley's past and present campus queens chatting and laughing in the backstage corridor was a spectacle. Members of the drama club and stage crew who happened to pass by did a double take, their eyes widening so much they nearly walked into walls. Even if they did, they barely felt the pain, too stunned by the sheer beauty of the scene. They quickly pulled out their phones to sneak a few pictures. Two campus queen-level beauties in one frame. It was a legendary sight. Why is there a guy next to them? He's totally ruining the shot. I'll have to Photoshop him out later. After a brief chat, Claire, still in high spirits, invited Yvonne to join them for a late-night snack. With me and your senior, Leo, there's a place called Summit Grill nearby. The food is great. Yvonne had just started to relax while talking about the play. Now, being invited to eat with them, she froze again. With the senior and the other senior, she instinctively looked from Claire to Leo. The memory of that mortifying morning in the dining hall came flooding back, and Yvonne was overcome with guilt. And no, I can't. I have something to do. And my grandpa's family is having another baby. I have to go call them. With that, she bolted. She scurried away, disappearing from the reasonable couple's sight. Leo watched her retreating figure, marveling. Her track skills are pretty good, too. Then he looked puzzled. Did the country change its policy on having more kids? It seemed like he was hearing about people having a second child all the time these days. Claire couldn't help but laugh, shaking her head. That girl, she's so thin-skinned. I'll have to have a proper chat with her later. Before she got the chance to have that heart-to-heart with Yvonne, a new week began. September 10th, Monday. It also happened to be Teacher's Day. During the afternoon class meeting, as soon as their advisor, Alex, walked into the classroom, he was ambushed by the advertising students, who set off party poppers that showered him in colorful streamers. Before he could recover, the students erupted in a chorus of Happy Teacher's Day, Alex, and he found himself holding a large bouquet of flowers and a gift purchased with class funds. Alex was both surprised and touched. He waved a hand. You guys are the best. Tonight, every single one of you meet at the Northgate Diner. My treat. The class erupted in another round of cheers. Alex is the man. That evening, the advertising students gathered at the Northgate Diner outside the East Gate. When they arrived, they were surprised to find that all 6 of the large tables in the main dining area had been reserved. They soon learned that the broadcast journalism class was also there, celebrating with their advisor. Alex was in charge of the advertising majors. The broadcast journalism advisor was the famously beautiful Ms. Sullivan from a humanities department. The fact that both advisors had chosen the same place for their Teacher's Day celebration immediately sparked the students' gossip senses. And sure enough, when the dinner began, the 2 advisors stood up to give a toast. As Alex and Ms. Sullivan raised their glasses to the students, the former cleared his throat, trying to sound composed. Everyone, I have an announcement to make tonight. Ms. Sullivan and I, we're now. Well, we're sort of. He stammered for a while, his face turning red, but he couldn't get the words out. Finally, Ms. Sullivan, who couldn't stand it anymore, took charge. Let me. She confidently took Alex's hand, raised her glass to the students, and smiled brightly. You've all probably guessed it by now, right? Your advisor, Alex, and I are together. The diner fell silent for a moment, then exploded in a deafening roar of cheers and whistles. The unexpected good news made the celebratory dinner even more lively. Students from both classes took turns toasting the 2 advisors. Alex was clearly thrilled, uncharacteristically accepting every drink offered. In minutes, he was on the verge of being drunk. Ms. Sullivan, seeing this, tied back her hair, rolled up her sleeves, and stood up with her glass, looking heroic. Alex can't hold his liquor. If you want a drinking contest, you'll have to go through me. The students were stunned for a second, then roared their approval. The scene struck Leo as oddly familiar. He felt like he had been in a similar situation before. He slapped his forehead. He remembered. At their high school graduation dinner, the then-class president, Bertha Sue, had stepped in to defend her deskmate from a barrage of toasts, taking on all challengers. The memory made Leo smile. He pulled out his phone and sent a text to his girlfriend, mentioning it. A short while later, Claire, who was on a shuttle bus heading back to the old campus, replied, her tone casual. Of course. A certain lightweight has a terrible tolerance for alcohol. If I didn't step in, I was afraid you'd end up under the table. Leo was incensed and furiously typed back. Who are you calling a lightweight? How about we go one-on-one and see who's who? The couple engaged in a fierce back and forth via text. One claimed they could drink 8 beers. The other boasted they could finish a whole case. One scoffed, saying that by the time he was conquering bars, Bertha Sue was still drinking from a baby bottle. The other retorted that by the time she was drinking everyone under the table, little Leo Hammer was still wearing split pants. Strictly speaking, despite attending countless parties and drinking on numerous occasions, the two had never actually had a drinking contest between just the two of them. They immediately reached a consensus. We'll pick a date and have a showdown. What does the loser do? The loser gives the winner a foot massage. That last part was Leo's idea. A moment later, a text from Claire came back, accompanied by a scornful emoji. You little perv. Trying to have your cake and eat it too, huh? After chatting with his girlfriend for a while, Leo was in a great mood, satisfied with their new wager. Before heading back inside the diner, he remembered something and pulled out his phone to call his high school homeroom teacher. It was Teacher's Day. He couldn't forget his old mentor. He had to send his best wishes. The call was answered quickly. On the other end, Iron Face Harrison seemed to be at a faculty dinner as well. He was delighted to hear from his star student and stepped out of the private room to talk. It sounded like he had already had a fair bit to drink. His voice was slurred, but he was in high spirits, his laughter booming. He asked about how Leo and Claire were doing. Then, he mentioned that he had also received many calls and texts from this year's graduating class. For a teacher, receiving well wishes from students on this day was the greatest source of pride. Leo smiled and chatted with his old teacher, making small talk. He didn't mind listening to Harrison's slightly drunken ramblings about the past. Time is a strange thing. It smoothed over the unpleasant parts of your memories, leaving only the warm, happy outlines. People would forget how strict their high school teacher had been, remembering only his kindness. At the end of the call, Harrison remembered something else. By the way, he said, how are the new freshmen from Northwood at Berkeley adjusting? A few of them called me today, but they were all so shy and wouldn't tell me much. This batch of kids, they're not as tough as your year. Too timid. Too introverted. I told all of them, once you're at Berkeley, if you run into any trouble, just tell them you're from Northwood High. Wear your school pins with pride. Even if the sky falls, you've got your seniors Claire and Leo to hold it up for you, right? Ha, am I right, Leo? On the other end of the line, Northwood High's honorary alumnus, Leo Hammer, nodded solemnly. Yes, sir. You're absolutely right. After Harrison hung up, satisfied, Leo put away his phone, his eyes wide with a dawning horror. Oh crap. Unexpectedly unlocked a new life achievement. Tell a little white lie to my beloved high school teacher. Back inside the diner, the party was in full swing. Unable to withstand the relentless toast from students of both classes, even a drinker as skilled as the beautiful Ms. Sullivan was starting to look flushed. As the newly minted boyfriend, Alex once again stepped up. Leave your teacher alone. Come at me. He lasted 3 glasses before collapsing again. The students knew their limits and didn't push the two advisors any further. Instead, they took advantage of their tipsy state to ask for some gossip. They wanted to know when and how the two had gotten together. And so they learned the story. The two had been colleagues, sharing an office, and a mutual attraction had grown over time. The turning point had been the spring trip to Spirit Springs Mountains 6 months ago. During the flash flood, in a moment of crisis, Alex had shown his true colors. He had unceremoniously scooped up Ms. Sullivan, deposited her in the back of a diesel trike, and sent her down the mountain to safety while he faced the danger himself. After that, their relationship had deepened. But there was still one last barrier to cross, and Alex, being too shy, had never managed to confess. So how did it finally happen? Come on, Alex, don't leave us hanging, the students urged. Facing their questions, Alex blushed and scratched his head, smiling sheepishly. Well, it was nothing really. Ms. Sullivan, who had sobered up a bit, saw her boyfriend's predicament and graciously stepped in. It really was nothing. If we're being honest, we have the owner of a motel near the East Gate to thank for it. Leo, who had been busy eating, immediately looked up at that. What was that? Did I just hear something familiar? As Ms. Sullivan explained, they learned that 2 weeks ago, the humanities faculty had a dinner in the city. Alex had drunk too much. Ms. Sullivan was taking him back to the old campus when, halfway there, he started feeling sick and insisted on getting out of the car. The cool night air hit him, and he threw up all over the sidewalk, barely able to stand. Ms. Sullivan was at a loss. Just then, she looked up and saw a sign for something called a motel. She half-dragged, half-carried Alex inside and went to the front desk to get a room. She was a little drunk herself and couldn't be bothered to call another cab, so she had planned to get 2 separate rooms. But the motel owner put down the men's magazine he was reading, glanced at the 2 of them, and slapped a single key card on the counter. Only got 1 room left. The students erupted in hoots and hollers. Ms. Sullivan rolled her eyes. Stop that. It's not what you think. That night, they stayed in the same room, but nothing scandalous happened. Ms. Sullivan simply took care of a very drunk Alex all night. But when Alex woke up the next morning and saw her lying next to him, he was horrified, assuming he had done something terrible in his drunken state. He was ready to get on his knees and apologize. He then beat his chest and swore that he had always liked her and would never disrespect her. But since things had come to this, he was determined to take responsibility. If she would forgive him, he would take care of her for the rest of his life. Ms. Sullivan had been about to explain, but when she heard Alex's red-faced confession and proposal, she had a change of heart. She smiled and nodded. Okay. And so, thanks to a small, comical misunderstanding, their relationship was made official. The students at the table listened, amazed and full of admiration. Leo was even more impressed. Good Lord. The ubiquitous Gilded Phoenix group. Mr. Chen is out here playing God and winning everywhere. The party continued, the diner filled with lively chatter. Since the advertising and broadcast journalism classes were together, Lily Liu was there too, sitting next to Leo. Seeing the 2 advisors blush and share a kiss amidst the cheers of the students, Lily couldn't help but smile. This is so nice, she said, her voice full of wistful admiration. Leo glanced at the girl beside him, who was clearly missing out on the romance, and asked casually, how are things with you and that wild boar? Oh, I mean Preston Jew? Lily laughed. Thanks to you, after I saw his true colors, I cut off all contact with him. But he hasn't given up. He's been calling me nonstop lately, trying to ask me out to dinner. I haven't been answering. Leo commented the guy's had a thick skin. During the flood, at a moment of life and death, the guy had abandoned her to save himself. It was a stark contrast to their advisor Alex. One got the girl, the other deserved to be despised. Lily smiled nonchalantly. Yeah, I heard his family recently hitched their wagon to a big shot, some company called the Crestview Group. I guess having some backing gave him his confidence back. Lily had just mentioned it in passing, and Leo had only listened casually. But still, the Crestview Group? Why does that sound so familiar? Daily requests for series boosts and gifts. Organize the main plot. Looks like I'll be writing for at least 2 more months. And although I designed the ending early on, I'm still a bit hesitant. Luckily, there's still time to work it out. The following week passed uneventfully. Claire's project meetings at Sterling Holdings became less frequent. Leo had long since become the hands-off boss of both Happy Nest and Mako Entertainment. As Chief Strategy Officer, the less you see of me, the more it proves the company is on the right track. If I have to get busy, it probably means we're in big trouble. That was the righteous explanation he gave his partner and CEO, David Chung. It earned him an eye roll so epic that David could have seen the back of his own skull. Slacking off is slacking off. Stop trying to make it sound so noble. To his beloved employees at Mako Entertainment, he had a different story. If the boss does everything, what's left for the employees to do? This is a chance for you to grow and develop. You should cherish this opportunity. A certain young master desperate to buy a rescue card enthusiastically agreed. My bro is right. The born-to-work, ever-diligent Isabella Zhao was not to be outdone in her praise. The boss is brilliant. I love working overtime. Leo Hammer was very satisfied. As expected, his own team was much more agreeable than that old fossil David Chung. With no other pressing matters, the lethal couple's life became even more relaxed. They attended classes, went out for meals, took evening strolls on campus, and occasionally visited the library. Recently, however, Claire had developed a new hobby, dragging Leo to the small auditorium to watch play rehearsals. The Griffin Players' repertoire included many other fairy tales, plays, and original works besides Cinderella. The club members often played multiple roles, jumping from one production to another. Yvonne Moreau was no exception, and whenever she, the freshman campus queen, was the star, the small auditorium was always packed to the rafters with adoring Berkeley students. They didn't come for the play. They came for a glimpse of the freshman beauty. Of course, there were also some genuine theater enthusiasts who would kindly enlighten the newcomers. You've come to the right place. Our Yvonne is a double threat. Not only is she gorgeous, but her acting skills are rock solid. That delivery, those lines. TSK. Oh, and by the way, she's recently developed a new vocal technique, a kind of vibrato. It's got a real unique flavor. but you have to be lucky to catch it. She doesn't do it for every performance. It was true that you couldn't catch it every time. Yvonne's vibrato only made an appearance when a certain reasonable couple was in the audience. She simply couldn't control it. A quick glance into the crowd, a glimpse of the two seniors, and she couldn't help but feel guilty. The memory of that morning in the dining hall would come flooding back, and she would die of social anxiety all over again. Her disobedient heart would start to flutter, and although she could still deliver a flawless performance, her fellow actors noticed something was off. After rehearsals, they would come over to ask with concern, "Yvonne, are you feeling unwell lately? Your pupils are shaking so hard they look like scrambled eggs. I know, doctor, maybe you should go get checked out." It wasn't just the members of the Griffin players who noticed. Leo and Claire saw it too. The former simply had sharp observational skills. "Hey, does it seem like Gibberish Girl keeps sneaking glances at us during her performance? And every time she does, her voice trembles a little." Claire, however, knew the full story. She thought for a moment, then smiled and shook her head. "I'll go talk to her." So that night, after the performance, Claire told Leo to go on ahead while she went backstage alone. When Yvonne came out of the dressing room, she found Claire leaning casually against the wall, waiting. Claire smiled and waved. "All done. There's a smoothie shop next to the auditorium. Come sit with your senior for a bit." "My treat." Her tone was light and breezy, but it made Gibberish Girl feel like a guilty child being led away by her teacher. They went to the smoothie shop and ordered 2 drinks. As they sat at a small table, Yvonne nervously bit her straw, wondering why the senior had asked her here. A moment later, Claire took a sip of her smoothie, looked up, and dropped a bombshell. "So, I hear Leo's in love with you." The single sentence almost made Yvonne choke on her drink. She coughed, her face turning bright red, and frantically waved her hands. "And no, senior, please don't misunderstand. It was my mistake." Her voice grew quieter and quieter, the memory of her social death replaying in her mind. She wished she could bury her head in the sand like an ostrich. Seeing the beautiful freshman looking so mortified, Claire couldn't help but laugh. "It's okay, it's not your fault. If it were anyone else, it might seem a bit presumptuous. But when it comes to my guy, it's perfectly normal." Yvonne looked up, stunned. "Normal?" Claire smiled. "Yeah, you're not the first. Your senior, Lily, has also been a victim." Yvonne's eyes widened. "Senior Lily, too?" And so, Claire cheerfully recounted the story of how the graded girl of the humanities department had been humbled by a certain someone last year. When she got to the good parts, Yvonne couldn't help but giggle. "So, Senior Lily has her embarrassing moments too. Dying of social anxiety is a lonely experience. But hearing that someone else has gone through something similar immediately lessens the awkwardness." Claire smiled and summarized. "So you see, your senior Leo is a titanium alloy grade, oblivious guy." Yvonne subconsciously nodded in agreement. "He really is. A normal person wouldn't snatch a drink back from someone's hand. And he still made me pay him $14 for breakfast." But oblivious as he was, the memory of him appearing like a knight in shining armor that evening in the Fenwood Old District was still incredibly cool. She just didn't understand why he had asked her to keep his secret. But he must have had his reasons. Shaking her head, Yvonne let the matter go. After Claire's explanation, she finally felt a sense of relief. Then, a thought occurred to her. She looked at Claire curiously. "Senior, you said there were others besides Senior Lily?" Claire nodded happily. "Of course." Then she casually gave an example. "In high school, there was this girl named Sarah Lynn." "Sarah Lynn?" Yvonne mulled over the name for a moment. "Sounds kind of tacky. Doesn't sound like a good person." Claire's eyes suddenly lit up. She looked at the freshman before her and found her more adorable and agreeable than ever. What a promising young talent. She's definitely my kind of person. A little guidance from her senior was all it took for Yvonne to finally let go of her anxieties. From then on, even when the reasonable couple was in the audience during rehearsals, her performance was no longer affected. Under the spotlights, Cinderella was confident and beautiful, her passion for her dreams making her even more captivating. The audience cheered and applauded every time, but some were also a little disappointed. We don't get to hear her unique vocal technique anymore. Was it a one-time thing? Lily Lou also came to see her direct Junior's performance a couple of times and was delighted by her brilliance. Afterward, she went backstage with flowers to congratulate and encourage her, and also to check if the freshman was still being affected by a certain lethal couple. To her surprise, she found her junior in high spirits, seemingly completely over the shadow of her social death. In fact, when Yvonne saw her, she wasn't just in a good mood. She was also smirking, trying to hold back a laugh. Lily was confused. "Yvonne, what are you smiling about?" Yvonne feigned innocence. "Nothing. just thinking of something happy. Lily? Question mark. When she eventually learned the truth, it was her turn to nearly die of social anxiety. Ah, Claire Sterling, you just wait. I'm going to get you for this. The resentment of a vanquished foe naturally had no effect on the great Claire Sterling. For the next few days, Claire's enthusiasm didn't wane. Whenever she had free time, she would drag Leo to the small auditorium to watch various rehearsals. One time, she ran into an old acquaintance backstage, the vice president of the Griffin Players, a sophomore from the broadcast journalism program. They had gone on a spring trip to Spirit Springs Mountain together, sharing meals, volunteering at the Hope School, and surviving a flash flood. After such an ordeal, their bond was deeper than most. The vice president was happy to see Leo and Claire. He had just come over to say hello, but when he heard that Claire had been coming to watch performances and was interested in theater, an idea sparked in his mind. "Why don't you give it a try, Claire?" he suggested eagerly. "Play a role, just for fun." He had just said it on a whim, not really expecting her to agree. But Claire seemed intrigued, and Leo, sensing his girlfriend's interest, encouraged her. "Yeah, why not? Didn't you say you wanted to try new things?" Claire glanced at her boyfriend, pouting slightly. "Now you're the one convincing me." Although she was tempted, she didn't agree on the spot, simply saying that she would consider it if an opportunity arose. She didn't expect the opportunity to come so quickly. That Wednesday evening, the Griffin Players were rehearsing Snow White. The girl who was supposed to play the queen had a last-minute emergency and couldn't make it. They needed a substitute. In a production of Snow White, most of the female actors wanted to play the princess, or at the very least, a cross-dressing prince. The role of the evil queen was an unpopular one. No one wanted to be the villain. But Claire was interested. When she heard they needed a queen, she volunteered, finding the vice president and expressing her willingness to give it a try. The vice president was overjoyed. He couldn't believe his luck. He agreed instantly. The news spread like wildfire. The old campus was in an uproar. What? Claire Sterling is going to be in Snow White as the queen. What are we waiting for, brothers? Charge! That night, the small auditorium was a sea of people. The 500-seat hall was crammed with over 800 students. Those who couldn't get in stood outside, peering through the windows, craning their necks, and straining their eyes. Don't push, don't push. Let me see, let me see. Such was the drawing power of the campus queen. When the performance began, the lights dimmed, and the noisy auditorium fell silent. On stage, the ivory curtains parted, and an ice-blue spotlight cut through the darkness. Under the watchful eyes of thousands, Claire, dressed as the queen, glided onto the stage. A black velvet gown and a crown, paired with deep purple lipstick, created an aura of cold elegance and dangerous allure that needed no words to convey. Her impossibly beautiful face was enough to capture the hearts of everyone present. Others didn't want to play the evil queen because they didn't want to be a foil for Snow White. But with Claire, that wasn't an issue. When she played the queen became the sole protagonist of the fairy tale. With just one appearance, she effortlessly conquered the entire audience. Backstage, the vice president of the Griffin Players was grinning from ear to ear. Getting Claire to guest star was a massive win. The only slight problem was that the queen was so beautiful that when Bertha Sue held up the magic mirror and said, "Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" the audience erupted in a deafening chorus. "It's you. It's you." Their voices completely drowned out the actor who was supposed to be the mirror's voice. When the queen ordered the huntsman to kill Snow White, Claire's portrayal was chillingly fierce, her presence commanding. The audience screamed and cheered. "Senior, kill me. Kill me, please." Many of the screams came from the freshman girls. The scene descended into chaos. By the time the unprecedented performance of Snow White was over, the audience was still buzzing with excitement. They had finally witnessed the legendary beauty and charisma of their senior campus queen and were completely blown away. The older Berkeley students, however, were unfazed, looking down on the freshmen's lack of worldly experience with an air of superiority. There are campus queens every year, but the number one goddess of Berkeley is, and always will be, Claire Sterling. She is one of a kind. Claire's guest appearance was a one-time thing, but its aftershocks continued to ripple through the campus. The next morning, the hallway outside the sophomore international finance classroom was packed. Freshmen were scrambling to get a glimpse of the campus queen. They nearly pushed Leo Hammer, who had come to pick up his wife from class, out of the crowd. The bell rang. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, Claire calmly walked out. Her gaze swept over the crowd of freshmen, and she smiled faintly. "You've seen me. You've had your fun. You can all disperse now. Don't block the hallway." Her light, calm words seemed to carry a magical power, making everyone subconsciously obey. Then, Claire's gaze fell on a certain someone. A smile touched her lips, and she beckoned. "You, freshman, stay behind." The crowd froze, all eyes turning to the lucky person who had been singled out. Leo, unfazed, walked up and took his wife's hand. "All right. Hey, senior, want grab lunch?" A classic scene from the lethal couple's daily life. The freshmen were stunned. "What the? Who is that? Get your filthy hands off our senior campus queen." An older student passing by kindly advised the freshman, "It's okay. That's just our famous lethal couple. You'll get used to it. By the way, if you're interested, you can join our anti-Northwood High Alliance." Claire's guest appearance had been a spur-of-the-moment decision, but it had raised her profile on campus, especially among the freshmen, to a whole new level. Countless new students were in awe of her beauty and charisma. However, a very small number of them had taken it a step further. In a private room at a KTV near campus, a group of freshman boys were drinking and singing. The table was covered in expensive foreign liquors that most students couldn't afford. On the couch, a boy was looking at a picture of Claire's performance that had been uploaded to the student forums. An undeniable look of awe crossed his face. Then he smiled, his eyes glinting with the thrill of a hunter. He announced to his friends, "That one. She's mine." Several days had passed since Claire's guest performance as the Queen in Snow White, but the ripples were still spreading. Most of the freshmen who had gotten into Berkeley came from smaller cities or towns across the country. Buried in their studies back in high school, they had never encountered a woman of such stunning beauty. Even after getting into a top university, these high achievers were still focused on their studies, not easily swayed by the temptations of the world. But Claire Sterling's beauty was simply off the charts. Her looks and presence could rival any celebrity on television. It made it impossible for them not to want to sneak another look. As a result, for the entire following week, whenever Claire's international finance class was in session, a crowd of heads could be seen peeking through the classroom windows. It was only after a few more days that the fervor finally began to die down. Regarding this, Leo, as Bertha Sue's official boyfriend, offered his opinion. "It's a good thing you only did that one cameo. If you had done a few more, who knows how many moths you would have attracted to your flame." Claire laughed. "Doing it once was enough to satisfy my curiosity. I'm not a professional, after all." The great Claire Sterling was accustomed to the fervent admiration of her underclassmen, both male and female, and paid it no mind. But she couldn't resist teasing her boyfriend about it. "What's wrong? Are you feeling insecure now that so many freshmen like me?" Leo scoffed. "What's there to be insecure about? Let them like you. You're my wife. They can't steal you away." He wasn't worried about the female fans. As for any clueless freshman who might get ideas about his Bertha Sue, they'd better not blame Leo Hammer for being ruthless. Seeing her boyfriend flexing and cracking his knuckles menacingly, Claire couldn't help but laugh. "Look at you, acting all tough. You think you could take on a whole crowd by yourself?" Leo flexed his bicep. "Of course. And if I'm not enough, I have backup." The group of veteran security guards he had recently hired for Happy Nest, led by the formidable Shun Shur, were on call 24/7, ready to be deployed at the command of the company's CSO. He had already used them once for the Fenwood Old District redevelopment project. They were extremely effective. Shun Shur and his men were still itching for more action, having secretly told their young boss to call them anytime he needed to teach some thugs a lesson. Only David Chung had been left utterly bewildered when he received a Good Samaritan Award from the North District Precinct. After finding out what had happened, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Good Lord. I hired a security team, and before my own company has any trouble, they're out there helping with the city's public safety." In any case, neither Leo nor Claire paid much attention to the little storm caused by the play. It was just a fun little anecdote in their campus life. In fact, most of the freshmen, after their initial awe, returned to their own lives. A goddess like Claire was to be admired from afar, not pursued. Most of them knew their own limits, and faced with her cool, aloof aura, they didn't dare to harbor any improper thoughts. Gradually, the excitement died down. Just when Claire thought the whole thing was over, on a Wednesday morning, after her class in the new campus, she was walking out of a convenience store when a boy blocked her path. He was handsome enough, but his narrow eyes had a hint of smugness. The moment he saw Claire, a flash of undisguised admiration and excitement crossed his face. He quickly composed himself, plastering on a polite smile. "Hi, senior. My name is Carter Vance. I'm a freshman in the finance department, so I'm your direct junior. I've heard your name ever since I got here. I really admire you. I was wondering if I might have the honor of treating you to a meal." As he spoke, he elegantly adjusted his collar, as if to nonchalantly show off the glacier watch on his left wrist. Claire looked up at him, a faint smile on her lips. "No, you don't." "Excuse me, Junior, I have plans." With that, she walked past him without another word, not bothering to remember his name. In her past life, as the president of Sterling Holdings, she had dealt with countless people from all walks of life. She could tell at a glance that beneath this boy's polite facade lay a core of arrogance and aggression. He was probably a spoiled rich kid who had gotten away with a lot thanks to his family's connections. But Claire couldn't be bothered to care. It had nothing to do with her. Not long after Claire had left, a few other boys sidled up to Carter. "Carter, man, she totally blew you off," one of them said cautiously. "I think she has a boyfriend, and she's so cold. Maybe you should just move on to someone else." Carter Vance watched Claire's retreating figure and chuckled. "Move on? Why would I do that? So what if she has a boyfriend? A taken woman is much more fun to chase." For Claire, being approached by someone was a common occurrence. She didn't give it a second thought and certainly didn't feel the need to mention it to her boyfriend. Meanwhile, Leo wasn't idle either. While his girlfriend was in class at the new campus, he was back at the old campus. He only had one gym class that afternoon, and after that he was free. His roommates, Marco, Leon, and Dylan, had all rushed back to their dorm to raid the new dungeon in the Battle Through the Heavens browser game. Leo didn't join them. Instead, he took a leisurely stroll around campus, using the time to sort out his thoughts. On one hand, there was the Heavenly Tactics project from Mako Entertainment. As the lead designer, he had to help with the gameplay and mechanics. On the other hand, there was Happy Nest's new quarterly strategic plan, which involved further penetrating the university market. That also required his input as the CSO. Lost in thought, he wandered aimlessly until he found himself behind an old faculty dormitory. Here, tucked away in a remote corner of the campus, was a small, tranquil garden. In the afternoon, it was deserted, except for an old man of about 60 or 70, sitting alone in a small pavilion, engrossed in a game of chess. The old man was dressed simply, his expression calm and serene. He held black and white stones in his hand, placing them on the board with a casual air. A breeze rustled the fallen leaves in the pavilion and stirred a lock of his white hair, creating a scene of quiet, zen-like elegance. Leo was filled with a sense of reverence. He felt he had stumbled upon a hidden master. Not wanting to disturb him, he tiptoed past the pavilion, casting a respectful glance at the chessboard. He had taken a couple of years of Go in an after-school program as a kid, so he had some familiarity with the 19x19 grid. But one look at the board made him stop in his tracks. He stared, then turned to the pretentious old man with a bewildered expression. "Sir, are you really putting on such a grand performance for a game of 5 in a row?" On Friday, after his afternoon class at the new campus, Leo went to the Happy Nest headquarters for a meeting. It was a closed-door, high-level meeting. Apart from Leo, David Chung, and a few key directors, no one below the mid-management level was qualified to attend. With the door shut, the group in the CEO's office conducted a thorough discussion of the company's strategic direction for the new quarter. Happy Nest's current main objective was to deepen the strategic development of its social networking platform. The primary target was still the university market. The previous Campus All-Stars competition and the joint sponsorship of the East Bay University Comic and Anime Fest had already yielded some success, establishing a solid foundation among college students across the country, especially in the East Bay area. But it wasn't enough. "Our current rival is the Quad, which used to be my campus," David Chung said, taking a rare drag from a cigarette. The smoke swirled up, failing to conceal the gravity on his face. "They just secured a massive round of new funding this half, and they're aggressively competing with us for the campus market. The pie's only so big. Every bite they take is one less bite for us." He paused, his expression grim. To put it more seriously, this isn't about who gets a bigger slice of the pie. This market competition is a zero-sum game. If they get the meat, we'll be left without even the soup. Leo held a cigarette in his hand, but didn't smoke it. He had smoked occasionally in his past life, but had quit in this one. Still, when he was thinking, he had a habit of rolling one between his fingers. "So, we need to find a way to further penetrate the university market," he said. "Before, we took a bottom-up approach, directly targeting the students' needs. Now, we need to go top-down. We need to engage directly with the university administrations and deepen our partnerships." Penny Fong, the mature and capable head of the marketing department, shook her head helplessly. "Students are easy to win over. University administrations are a different story. They're very guarded, and it's not easy to get a foot in the door." Hannah Ling, a rising star in the company who had been granted the rare privilege of attending this high-level meeting, had been diligently taking notes. "Now, She looked at Leo with hopeful eyes. Mr. Wallace, do you have a plan? At her words, everyone in the room, including David Chung, turned to look at Leo. This was their CSO, their Chief Strategy Officer. For the past 6 months, he had been the one who had consistently created miracles for them. Under their expectant gazes, Leo thought for a moment. He stood up. All right, I'll handle it. The words were spoken lightly, but just like every other time Happy Nest had faced a daunting challenge, they were a shot of adrenaline for everyone present. Coming from him, the words had a calming effect, instantly putting everyone at ease. After leaving the Happy Nest headquarters, Leo hailed a cab to the Sterling Holdings building to pick up his girlfriend. As darkness fell, the city lights of East Bay began to sparkle. Sitting in the back of the taxi, watching the cityscape fly by, Leo narrowed his eyes, his mind racing. As the company's CSO, one of Happy Nest's 2 anchors, he could afford to be relaxed and carefree on most days. But when it came to crucial decisions, he bore the weight of everyone's expectations and the company's future on his shoulders. The city lights reflected on his face, illuminating his handsome, maturing features and a deep, contemplative look in his eyes. The aura he exuded was so powerful that the driver couldn't help but sneak glances at him in the rearview mirror, marveling silently. The kid looks so young and handsome, but that presence, it's like some of the big-shot CEOs I've driven around. He was deep in thought, planning his strategy, but when the taxi arrived at the Sterling Holdings building and he saw his girlfriend's familiar figure walking toward him, his face immediately broke into a smile. Meeting's over. Claire quickly opened the back door and slid in next to him with practiced ease. Just finished. Did you miss me? Leo puffed out his chest righteously. You were all I could think about. Claire beamed, and right in front of the taxi driver, who was practically having a stroke, she leaned over and kissed her boyfriend on the cheek. Good boy. There's a reward waiting for you at home. Leo was overjoyed. Yes, let's go home. Driver, step on it. It's urgent. All thoughts of Happy Nest strategy and the responsibilities of a CSO were instantly banished from his mind. It was the weekend. He didn't bring work home. Nothing in the world was more important than his wife. By 8 o'clock, the master and mistress of the single slaughterhouse had returned to their LNS house. Too lazy to cook, they opted for a small hot pot with steaming sliced lamb, which was just as cozy and satisfying. After dinner, the couple lounged on the couch, sharing stories from their week. They didn't talk about work. As for school, there wasn't much to report. The only thing worth mentioning was the old man Leo had met near the faculty dorms. He was like a professional loafer, spending his days playing chess in the garden pavilion, usually against himself. When he saw a handsome young man, namely, the humble Leo Hammer, he would rope him into a game. Out of respect for his elders, Leo had obliged. Claire was curious. Go. Leo waved a hand dismissively. 5 in a row. The old man was a terrible player. Even at 5 in a row, he was getting thrashed so badly he would yelp in frustration and try to take back his moves at least twice a game. Claire couldn't help but laugh. And you still play with him? Leo was indignant. Crushing a newbie is fun. It's the same for you when you play Brainiac Blitz. Claire thought about it and nodded in agreement. True. The two of them, one bullying an old man, the other bullying kids. They were like a 2-person wrecking crew, terrorizing both the nursing homes and the kindergartens. The lethal couple, truly living up to their name. After telling his story, Leo asked his girlfriend about her week. Claire thought for a moment and shook her head. Everything's fine. Nothing special. The only thing was the freshman who had tried to ask her out, whose name she had already forgotten. It wasn't worth mentioning. She had seen plenty of entitled rich kids like him before. He wasn't even worth a second thought. That was Claire's casual assessment. But she didn't realize that some people were just that fearless. The following Tuesday morning, after her class at the new campus, as Claire was walking out of the building, she was once again confronted by an annoying figure. Carter Vance approached her with a wide smile. Senior, what a coincidence. A satisfying little high point tomorrow. Don't worry, no angst lately. The final bit of angst is still being carefully considered. I'm a little worried it's too harsh, so I'm thinking of ways to handle it. For the sake of your thoughtful author, please send some series boosts and gifts.